I don't know.
I'm ready when you are.
Director is Liza. I don't know who Liza is either.
Or Lizzie.
Or Lizzie. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the APG. We have a special guest here.
Hi.
First Officer Lisa. Okay. If you're going to talk that loud, I'm going to turn your volume down.
How do you spell Lisa then?
Lisa.
Oh, I'm dyslexic.
Just the British way of saying it and
I
spelling
figured
it.
it was just the British spelling. They do things correct, and we do.
Well, we write Z's backwards apparently, but I don't know about that. I'm ready.
Okay. Let's go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Clap. It always cracks me up. That's the latency there.
Oh.
It's like a second later. So.
Gotcha.
Supposedly, we were all clapping at the same time.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
Hi. I'm actually here today.
Yay.
I was actually going to be here last week, but you guys up the time on me, so it killed my ability to get back in time.
Hey, let's do that clap again.
Why isn't your recorder on?
Now it is.
Absolutely
All right.
classic.
Ready? 3, 2, 1. That just always tickles me. Because if you could hear what we're hearing over here, it's like we go clap and then clap, like a full second later. Okay. Now we have it. It's actually being recorded. Folks watching the video and watching us live, this is Lisa Mays, first officer on the trip that we're flying right now.
Hi.
And I forced her to be a co-host.
And no, you did not upgrade because you said the trip, like the 777.
No, I mean the TRIP trip, like you go on a trip.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I never refer to the 777 as the trip. Who does that, Dana?
Nobody's the 777 anyway.
777. Yeah.
At least it's not the bin liner. We won't get started on that.
As you'll hear, this guy right here, the guy wearing the red cap, is a Boeing hater.
Not true.
Yeah.
No, I was forced into this corner by Miami Rick, who was a Boeing lover. We just needed someone to counter.
Well, he's not here right now anymore.
Yeah, but I'm sort of in character now, so it's
Okay.
stuck with it.
Okay.
Poor Neville. Neville is warning Lisa. He says, "May I apologize for what you're about to subject yourself to." That's from our friend Neville Bounds over here in England, or over there in England.
Yeah, we have a lot of folks in our chat room from the UK, and a lot of folks from the US. Nev is our technical expert. He's here to criticize everything that we do. No, I'm just kidding. He doesn't do that.
I'll give him a lot of material.
Are the levels okay? She asked, "Do I have to sound like I know what I'm talking about?" And I went, "No, none of us do."
I'm a bumbling moron.
That would ruin everything if you did. Then they'd expect accuracy and people that knew what they were talking about.
I'm known as a flying buffoon. So perfect.
Okay.
Captain Buffoon. Okay.
That's right.
Let me do a sound check here. Let's see. Let's do this one here.
WAPG.
Oh, it's loud.
It's the airline pilot guy.
How's that volume for you guys? Okay. All right. And let me get my notes. And intro. And there we go. So that's where we'll be looking at everything for the news and feedback and that kind of thing if you want to follow along.
Okay. Well, thank you, main man Micah. I know I'm not really.
Yeah, you are not a flying buffoon.
No baboon.
You're a buffoony fly. Just a buffin. What's a buffin? I don't know. Okay. Okay.
Where's HR when we need her?
She's lurking somewhere. I saw her in the chat room, and hopefully she'll join us later, even though she won't be able to make any noise, or she won't be able to talk.
She'll be able to squeal a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. I apologize for my co-hosts, especially that one.
Yeah.
Here we go. What time is it? 13.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 338.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from... what room am I in?
Sarasota.
Yeah, we're in Sarasota, but I'm in room... That doesn't
Make
matter.
it up.
Make something up.
Make it up. 561. Even though there's no 5 floors.
210, I think. 210.
Yes.
That's
yes,
easy. Okay.
210.
So usually I write this down right here, and then as I was starting to read this, I realized I had not filled all this stuff in. 210 at the Indigo Hotel. Or is it Hotel Indigo?
It is Hotel Indigo.
Hotel. That sounds fancier, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Indigo.
Very boutique-y.
In Sarasota.
You know, the Columbia is not too far from there either. Excellent restaurant.
Well, I don't think I'm not going to be eating anything after that. We have a 4:50 report in the morning.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah. Anyways, nice, easy. Well, we'll talk about it in the show. Okay, here we go. Back again. This time, 3:15.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 338.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 210 at the Hotel Indigo in Sarasota, Florida. Today's show was recorded on the 29th of August, 2018.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Would you ride and he's flying by? With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, an Airbus 320 goes nose wheel-less. Updates on a couple of incidents and accidents from earlier episodes. More news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, the cargo gods. So get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 338 is ready for pushback. Hello and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast where we do this pretty much every week, talk about aviation news and answer all of your great feedback. And joining me today to help in that endeavor is, from his studio in England, a professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Well, hi there, Jeff. Great to be back on the show again. Looking forward to a good one and some new faces. That's always good for a laugh.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Glad to see you, sir, and also joining us today on his motorcycle from a stately southern mansion in Smyrna, Georgia, barbecue master, bourbon, scotch, vodka connoisseur, motorcycle riding, pontoon boat skipper, and captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana.
Well, hello, everybody. Great to be back. Been a couple of weeks. Been on some extravagant trips you'll hear about, but looking forward to another great show. Well, actually, I'll talk about that as well, too.
Okay. Well, he's not looking forward to a great show then. All right. Well, great. We'll look forward, I guess, to hearing you talk about that, Dana. Great to see you again. And finally, last but not least, it's our special music for our guests. So we have a retired U.S. Air Force officer and KC-10, KC-135 tanker pilot, and presently a new hire pilot for Acme Air, Lisa Mays.
Hello. So glad to be here.
Are you sure? We'll
Nope.
find out in a little
Not
while.
sure at all.
I think you'll have fun. All right. So now we have to tell our Trololo guy to stop singing. Okay, stop singing. Okay. There we go. He is being faded out. He is all gone now. All right. Oh, hey. What did I say? I said stop. Okay.
He's just going to join Hillel in the toilet.
Yeah, I think she has no idea what we're talking about, but I'll explain it later. Maybe it'll become clear. I don't know. Perhaps not. Anyway, so let's start off introducing. Well, it was a very brief introduction there, Lisa. And as I said, you're new at Acme Air, and we're flying this trip together, and learned that you put in a full 20 years or so.
28.
28.
So I may
Wow.
be new to Acme, but I'm old on this earth.
Wow.
Thanks.
You don't look that old at all. That's amazing. All right.
Yeah.
She is definitely younger than I am, for sure. I mean, most everybody is except for Nick. Anyway, yeah. So tell us a little bit about you and your Air Force career, and kind of fill us in a bit.
Oh my goodness. Well, I grew up as an Air Force brat, so I was both my dad and my stepfather taught at the Air Force Academy, and I ended up going to ROTC, University of Colorado. From there, I was supposed to go right to pilot training, but the Air Force had too many pilots, so I went to be an air traffic control officer. Then I got the opportunity to fly the KC-135, then the KC-10, and then for 17 years, I taught general aviation, teaching cadets how to fly at the Air Force Academy. And I had a short stint at Frontier, and now I'm at Acme. Oops, I wasn't supposed to say that. Never mind.
Well, I mean, you can say that if you want. I mean, I don't know. I've never heard of that.
No, that was good. You were at Acme. That's exactly what you're supposed
Because
to
you're no longer with that other carrier, so it's okay.
Okay.
I think that you're off the hook there.
Okay, good.
I don't know if, and if they go after you, I don't know you. Never heard of you before. Yeah, so that's really cool, and so I thought she'd be perfect for our show, and I thought that everybody would get a kick out of hearing from you and your perspective on things, Lisa.
Oh gosh, I'm scared. I'm going to say something stupid.
Well,
Which is
that's what
common.
we do all the time.
Yeah, that's
really
really
doesn't
that's
Join
my
the
normal.
club.
See?
Awesome.
Okay. So let's see. We're on day 2 of a 3-day trip. We started on Tuesday. This is a really nice trip, by the way. It's a double Sarasota layover. We were here in Sarasota yesterday afternoon. And shortly after we got in, we changed into our civilian clothes and headed over to, well, we walked out. We were going to walk over to Bricks Smoked Meats, a wonderful barbecue joint here in Sarasota. And then the sky decided to just open up and got a little stormy. So we thought, okay, well, let's do the Uber. So after 2 attempts, the first guy that you summoned for Uber apparently was circling around where we were supposed to be picked up, and I think he gave up and charged you for it.
Yes, exactly.
But luckily, you
I
got
bring
your
that
money
out
back.
in Uber drivers. They cancel on me all the time.
Oh, rejection. And so I thought, well, let me try it. So I put in an Uber request, and this person actually found us. We kind of found him. We kind of met halfway, I guess, and ended up getting dropped off at Bricks. And we had like a little mini APG meetup. Dean Collett lives in the area. He drove down and met us up at Bricks, and we had a great barbecue meal and some beers, and great conversation.
It was delicious. Then Dean rescued us and took us back to the hotel.
Yes, we got a ride from Dean back to the hotel, so that worked out well. And so, Dean, if you're listening, enjoyed meeting you, and look forward to meeting up with you again in the future. Now, we did kind of advertise it was going to be a meetup here, but I guess, being in the middle of the week, it's kind of difficult for a lot of people to make it. I'm not sure exactly how many people live right here in the Sarasota area, but anyway, hopefully next time we'll get a few more people to join us. Let's see. So today, all we did was we left this morning, flew up to Atlanta, and then back here. The weather was great for at least our part of the day, and we were back at Sarasota International. I guess it's Sarasota Bradenton International at 12 o'clock. So or just before noon. So
rough.
Nice, easy day.
Rough life.
Yeah, it's a tough trip. Early morning tomorrow morning though, 4:50 report time, but get back in Atlanta by 1 o'clock or so. She is a commuter, lives in where? Colorado Springs?
Colorado Springs.
Yay. Okay. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Did I do anything else between the last show and this trip? I'm looking through my list of things to talk about. I do have some other things to talk about, but first, let's talk to Dana. We haven't seen you in a while. You weren't on the last trip, last two trips, right? I mean, the last two shows, I should say.
Yeah, the last two shows. One I was on vacation, and then the next one my in-laws were in town, so I was unable to make either show. But I've got to tell you, I listened, and that's why I kind of hinted towards another great show. No, yeah, the last two shows were fantastic, especially with Colonel Jeff coming on the show. So I enjoyed listening to both of them, and really good talk about the Horizon Air plane issue and what happened there, and then call me a Looney Tunes captain. I really appreciate that. My tri-tune boat. It's kind of funny. I still have more captain time on that than I do on my airplane. So,
who is it that called you a Looney Tune captain? I'm trying to remember that. I didn't. It was Nick.
It was Nick. Yeah.
Who, me? I
Yeah,
can't
you.
imagine me making such a joke.
I can't either.
You know, never, not a chance in this world. So, but anyways, yeah, it was took a week vacation. Like I haven't been working. I haven't actually seen it inside of an airplane since August 8th. Oh, Nick's counting down. I see that. We'll talk about that in a minute, Nick.
Yeah, Nick is showing his app in the video. So if you're listening to the audio, let's explain. His app is a countdown to his retirement, and it says 375 days to go. Very cool. Just over a year. But who's counting? Nick.
Nobody's
All right.
counting, Nick. Nobody.
So tell us about your vacation, your holiday.
Well, I decided to go ahead and take the motorcycle of my lovely bride, and we had a couple friends come in town from Florida. They had never ridden in the North Carolina, North Georgia, and Tennessee mountains. So I went up there and went to visit the Blue Ridge, the Tail of the Dragon, which anybody that rides knows that's one of the most famous roads in the entire world. 308 turns and 11 miles. It's pretty sick. And then we went through the Smoky Mountains, then over to the Blue Ridge Parkway, and just spent a lovely week riding. The weather was amazingly nice, so it was very pleasant to ride. And the scenery was just spectacular. The company was also awesome. So the motorcycles behaved. I behaved. So those are the most important things that we can ask for, right? So that was very enjoyable. And then came back and, of course, missed the show. We were in the mountains without any internet, cell phone service or anything. So it was really nice to be completely disconnected from the world for a little bit. Off the grid. Yeah. So beautiful trip. Then came back, and the following week they didn't use me for my 4 days of availability, and gave me plenty of time to prepare for the in-laws to come in town. We just had a fantastic weekend this past weekend between, and when you were going on air, we were at the zoo, not the zoo called Acme or APG, but the zoo with animals. Got to see plenty at the Atlanta Zoo, and got to see plenty of animals, and that's why
where my oldest daughter works.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Well,
Yeah.
You tell your oldest daughter we had a fantastic time there, and it was beautiful, a beautiful zoo day, and got to see the elephants and got to see the gorillas and the pandas. I got to see all three of the pandas that were available, and they were so cute. So cute. So the zoo was one day. Then we celebrated all right, I'm getting a year closer to retirement. Nick and I, and this makes a lot of sense, we're both Virgos. Figured that out now. So I celebrated my birthday and went out on the lake on Friday all day. Went for some Japanese food with 14 of my closest friends. And that was Friday after I was recovering from my hangover as I'm eating my dinner. Yeah, that was kind of fun. And Saturday we spent a very nice day in the North Georgia mountains once again at a wine fest at the Yona winery, which is a fantastic place. And then Sunday all day out in the boat. So really good couple of weeks. And now I am sitting on short call, have been on short call yesterday and today. Surprisingly, no call as of yet, but 3 days in a row now, because tomorrow they put me on short call as well. So I'm paying back all that luxurious time that I had kind of off this month, and got to really enjoy the entire month of August and here in North Georgia.
So you kind of skipped over something. I thought you just said something about you're retiring in a year.
No, you're closer to retirement.
Oh, okay.
My birthday. My
I
birthday.
think you're not really that old. I thought you had a lot more time left at the
Yeah, no, I'm ready to retire. But yeah, no, we celebrated the birthday on Friday. So
Okay. Well, happy birthday.
a year older, I guess. But
Yes.
now I know that Nick and I are both Virgos. That makes a lot of sense now.
You know, when we have federal air marshals on board, and we and other people that are flying with weapons from different governmental agencies, usually they're law enforcement officers, and we refer to them as Leos. And so every time the gate agent says to me, "We have a Leo in seat 19C," and I said, "Okay, thanks. Tell him I'm a Capricorn." And a lot of the times it's like they just look at
That
me
wasn't
like,
even that funny.
well, thank you for laughing, though. I appreciate that. You're going to get a good report. Okay. I have to do a.
You're a lot cleaner than what I say. I say I'm a Virgo, the Virgin, which
Ah.
is true. The Virgo is the Virgin sign.
But it's so funny.
You're
So many
working
times.
for the wrong Acme company. You realize that, Dana. You should be working for my Acme company.
Mhm.
Well, that's true. You do resemble that remark directly, don't you, Nick?
Yep.
Anyway. Well, very good. Well, Dana, great to see you, and we missed you, and we're glad that you're here for today's show.
Yeah,
And,
I hope to be able to stay for the entire time, because right now, let's see, it's exactly 3:30, so I've got exactly 3.5 hours worth of show call left for the day. So I'm hoping that they don't call me.
Yeah, we hope that you'll make it. You'll notice that in the beginning of the show here, we did not introduce Dr. Steph, and it's not because she's not available. It's because her voice is not available today. She's having some issues with that, but we told her when she does get home to go ahead and join us anyway, and maybe she'll be able to squeak out some funny sounds or something. So we'll see, or maybe do sign language, which for those of us
Perhaps you
listening
can
to the
put
audio,
Taco in front of
Pardon
the microphone. That might be good.
I'm say that again. I'm sorry.
Put Taco in front of the microphone. That'll work.
Her dog is a taco, or as Nick says, taco. They pronounce things funny over there. Funny like. Anyway,
And Taco is the cutest one on the show for sure.
that's true, and is the smartest.
Yes.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get to see Taco too. Okay, Nick. Last
sir.
and certainly least. What have you been up to?
Well, because I'm such a relaxed old gentleman and don't do a great deal of flying anymore, I haven't done a trip. I have just been putting my feet up, which actually has caused me a little bit of pain. I think I've got a problem with my Achilles again in my left ankle. That's terrible, isn't it? I was bowling this weekend, and I have to report that I am now the Chichester Priory Park Bowling Club champion of 2018. So that was a good weekend for me. But more importantly,
Wait a minute, we got to do the cheering, the applause. Way to go! And there's the
That's a seal clap.
There's the walrus or whatever that is.
Yeah, you got to put
Seal
the
clap.
hands backwards for seal claps. Anyway,
And now you look like an idiot.
more importantly, a great old mate of mine off the F-18s in Australia, Rowie, he flew in Acme Kangaroo. He's just converting onto the beautiful A380. And so he was on a London trip and said, got to come and see you. And so he popped down. Lovely guy. We've known each other for, good on 30 years now. So brilliant to see him. And he remembered the magic ingredient for a good life, which is a beautiful Australian port called Galway Pipe. And he bought me 2 bottles. So we drank most of one, but I still have one left on the cupboard over there, which is
let's share that when I'm back.
special occasions.
I love
well,
pork.
if you come, it'll be a special occasion, I guess. So,
I
but
guess.
so that's been my week. It's been very relaxed, and pardon me, not much happening until I head off to Dubai on Monday. So nice weekend at home.
All right. And we should mention that you have a trip next month. You're going to be in Atlanta.
Most certainly, yeah. We're this assuming that I pass my assessment of competency, which is my Dubai trip. I'm heading off to Washington, and I think I'm going to catch up with Richard in Washington, all being well. And then, yep, the next trip is Atlanta, and I'll be landing on the 14th, Friday the 14th. And I'm hoping we can get together with any APG listeners, preferably somewhere not too far from the hotel. I mean, obviously we can move out if we need to, but it's just that I'll be fading fast. So at some point of the evening, I'm probably going to have to make a quick exit or fall asleep in my beer.
I think
because
we
I'll
should
be a bit
probably try to
weary.
make it somewhere downtown. That'd be nice and convenient
That
for
would
you.
be great fun. That would be good. So if there is anyone available, keep Friday evening free. I land at about 3:30ish, I guess. So 6 o'clock in the evening will probably be a good start time. And we'll find somewhere that's not too expensive downtown where we can get together and have a few beers. I'll try and drag a few of the crew down if they're up for a drink. And you can see some of the Acme Red ladies and possibly gentlemen. And you and I, Jeff, can go hide in the corner and talk airplanes.
All right, sounds like a plan. And Dana as well, if you're going to be around.
Absolutely, Danny. Yeah, if you're kicking around.
Yes,
Bring the hog down.
Because you're coming over, I've adjusted my schedule a little bit. So yes, I will be here.
Oh, what a gent. Brilliant. Thanks.
Smiles.
Yay.
So speaking of meetups, we talked about the Sarasota meetup, the upcoming meetup in Atlanta on the 14th. And there is a really important meetup that we just kind of finalized plans for very, very recently. In fact, I just received an updated email from the lady who is kind of organizing the thing. And this, we've talked about it on a few previous episodes, and we weren't sure we were going to be able to do it or not. We weren't sure of what our schedule was going to be like, but on the 4th of September, we're going to have a Flight 93 memorial meetup in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Flight 93 was, of course, the United flight that was one of the 4 that were hijacked, or 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. And they have a very nice park and a memorial. And so I'm at Dulles for a layover on the 4th. And Richard Fairbairn is going to pick me up. We're going to drive over to his local airport where he has access to a general aviation plane. We're going to fly. Hopefully the weather is going to be good. From there to Shanksville. And we're going to meet up with Miss Rebecca Saylor. And let me see. Let me read her email that we just received like an hour ago. She said, "Hi, just got off the phone with Ranger John, who has been so helpful." I'm sorry, Robert. Thank you, Liz, my producer. She says, "Who are you talking about?" Richard. It's Robert Fairbairn. Richard is Robert's brother, and I just really shouldn't talk about him. So sorry, Robert. Anyway, so she says, here's what the community might need to know. A ranger is going to meet us near the outdoor map around 3:30. Again, this is at the Flight 93 Memorial, and spend about half an hour with us as an overall orientation and Q&A. And then he will leave us to ourselves to tour the site at our own pace. And then our guide, a different ranger, not Ranger John, but John's hand-selected tour guide, who is an aviator himself, will be taking us around the memorial. And that ranger said that he's looking forward to our visit, and we are too. And then Rebecca, or Becky, as she says in this email, plans to be there much earlier than Captain Jeff's and Robert's arrival via aircraft to touch base with the Rangers, and any APGer who might also want to arrive earlier. Please feel free to reach out to Becky via email or phone. And, probably the best thing to do if you're planning on going, if you don't mind, listen to Hillel at the end of the show, and he'll tell you how you can join the Slack team, the APG Slack team. And there we have some good communications. We'll have telephone numbers for Becky and email addresses and such. And if it's okay with her, I'll find out to be sure before I put them in the show notes. That'll hopefully be there as well. So if you're in the area or you plan to make the drive or the flight to Shanksville for the Flight 93 Memorial get together on the 4th. Look for that. And she says, I can be of any assistance to other APGers planning to attend. So Becky's going to pick us up from the, I forgot what the name of the airport is, but it's the closest GA airport from the Flight 93 Memorial. And we're going to, we'll have a good time, although it's kind of a, it's one of those things where it's not a super party, feeling, because you're going to be reliving that whole event of September 11th, 2001. And it was a big tragedy, but I'm looking forward to meeting up with people and sharing that experience. And we'll have our recorders going, and we'll have something to share on the following show, hopefully. Anything to add, Dana or Nick? And I think I saw some communications going on when I was talking. Perhaps Liz is trying to tell me something else. No,
not reference that.
Okay.
I just got Robert's name wrong. Got the R right, which isn't bad for a man of my age.
That's
but,
why I did it. It's your fault.
There you go. Oh yeah, all my fault. I got big shoulders. I can cope with that.
You got what? Big what?
Big
Shoulders.
Oh, shoulders. Okay.
He's just an old fat.
Understood. Okay, so look forward to meeting up with Becky and Robert Fairbairn and others for that Flight 93 Memorial meetup on the 4th of September. I mentioned in the last show, later in the month, I'll be in Columbus for a very short meetup on the 19th, and St. Louis the next day. We'll have a bigger meetup, or longer, perhaps, sometime during the day, hopefully. And let's see. Oh, I was asked to host or be a co-host on the Plane Talking UK show on this Friday. So if you don't already watch and listen to the PT UK, you should, because it's a great show. And I'm honored that Matt Smith and Neville Bounds has asked me to join them for this week's recording. And that should be on Friday, sometime in the afternoon around 2:00 Eastern Daylight, I believe. So that's all I have written down on my. Oh no, I have one more. Oh, I have a couple more things actually. Those are the meetups. Tiffany, one of our really cool APG community members, she's a librarian and a professor at a university in Buffalo, and she has put together an aviation reading list. And she has just finished up that task, and we're going to somehow figure out how to put that on the website. And so when that happens, I'll let you know. But it's a great resource for books about aviation that you might want to check out. And the last thing, Peter Biondi, or Biondi, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but Peter, he sent feedback before. And at the end of my last trip, we were walking, or I was walking through the B concourse heading toward the plane train. And this guy comes up to me and goes, "Captain Jeff." And I went, "Oh, hi." And he was wearing a lanyard with a airport badge thing. And it said, and his name tag said, Atlanta Airport Chaplain. And he said, "Hey, this is Peter." And he said, one of the things he does, one of many things apparently, is he's a volunteer chaplain at the Atlanta International Airport, and he speaks like 5 languages, one of which is Portuguese, and he knows some folks in Brazil, and one of which just recently interviewed me on his video podcast, and so I'll put that information in the show notes so you can listen. And I didn't do it in Portuguese because I can't speak Portuguese. I can barely speak English actually, but it's all in English. And it was just, but if you've been around me for any time at all, it's the same stuff you've heard over and over and over again. So it's probably not going to be that interesting. But
if one of those 5 languages is Latin, that's cheating.
Nope. Portuguese, Spanish, French, English, and Pig Latin, I think. No, I can speak Pig Latin. I forgot what the 5th one was, but I thought he said he speaks 5 languages.
Swahili?
No, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure how to do that. Anyway, we had a great time. Talked for a bit before I finally caught the train to go home, And Peter, if you're listening, I really enjoyed meeting you again or meeting you for the first time and seeing you. And I'm glad now I have a resource at the Atlanta International Airport. He told me some really interesting things about talking with. He's available to talk with crew members and that kind of thing, and talked to me about some pretty serious things. I'm thinking, wow, it's a wonderful job that he does. One of the things he does is he walks around and he helps people out, getting to their gates, people that don't speak English, etc. And he gave me something. It's a piece of paper I'm holding. See, you can tell it's a real piece of paper.
Mhm.
And he said, this is a true story that happened. And I got permission from Peter to read this on today's show, and I thought it was worth reading. This is a true story that happened to me 3 years ago. On the weekends, I'm a volunteer chaplain at the Atlanta airport. Most of the time, I walk around the terminals helping people in trouble. Some are lost. Some do not speak English. Some have some have little experience with airports, and some are just sad or frustrated. One day, I was standing in the lobby and saw a Japanese person approach me. He came from the side, did not see my badge, did not know who I was. He stood beside me and said, "Please help, no English, Portuguese only." I am actually fluent in Portuguese, and he had no clue who I was. I replied in Portuguese, and he was looking at me amazed. I asked him how he knew I spoke Portuguese. He said he did not. He said he had arrived the night before from Japan and had lost the connection to Brazil. He was a Brazilian Japanese who moved to Japan for work. He said he was from a poor family, and that was just the second time that he was traveling by plane in his life. He was wearing a surgical mask and said that he had cancer and was traveling to Brazil to have surgery. The airline sent him to the hotel the night before. The hotel shuttle had left him at the airport that morning to go to New York and from there take a flight to Brazil. He said that he had been walking around the airport discouraged and afraid because he did not speak English and was not sure what to do. He said that I was the only person he had courage to approach and ask for help. He could not believe that I spoke Portuguese and knew exactly how to help him. I took him to the check-in counter to get his boarding pass and check about his luggage. I took him all the way to the gate, wrote him 2 notes in English to give to the airline agents in New York to help him with his connection. When he was about to board and say goodbye, he said something that almost made me cry. He said that there are days that looks like God forgot about you. He had cancer, missed his flight, and everything was going wrong. However, what are the chances to walk into a big airport and find someone like me? He said that it was a sign that God was taking care of him, and he was sure his surgery would be a success. He said that God sent him an angel. Some days we think that God has forgotten us, looks like everything is going wrong, and we feel discouraged. But if we walk a few more steps, we may find an angel waiting there. He may look different from what we think or imagine, with different clothes, no wings, but they're there, just a few more steps ahead. There are also times that we can be that angel for someone. We just need to make ourselves available. We always seek a miracle for us, but sometimes we can be a miracle for someone else. As Leo Biscaglia says, is that the way you pronounce that? Leo
think so.
Biscaglia? As Leo Biscaglia says, a perfect day is not a day that things go in. A perfect day is not a day that things go my way, but a day when I can make life better for someone else. God bless you, Peter Biondi. So I thought that was great. I want to read that on our show. And thank you, Peter, for giving that to me and giving me permission
Very
to read it.
uplifting.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. Okay. Buscalia. That's our main man, Micah, in the chat room helping us out with the pronunciation. Thank you, sir. By the way, this chat room is like 25, 30 seconds behind what we're doing live, which is kind of a pain sometimes because that would have come in handy if he had, because I'm sure he typed that right away to help me out. But by the time we saw it, it was too late. Thanks anyway, main man, Micah. We do appreciate it. Okay. With that, anything else to say before we move on to the coffee fund?
Let it roll. Coffee
All right,
fund. Here we go.
Here we go.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
This is where you have to sing with me. I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, the Jeff Smith plays and sings in the background. We're going to talk about the Coffee Fund, which is, of course, your way to support the show financially if you have the financial resources to do so. If you're someone who needs to spend your money on the roof over your head and clothes and food and most importantly, flying lessons, please do not send us any money because you need to spend it on, it's priorities, right? But anyway, if you have some extra shekels or coins in your pocket and you want to throw them our way, just don't throw them too hard, please. Check out the Coffee Fund and become part of our Coffee Fund cadre. And since the last show, using the classic fund method, we have Tony Stubbings. And again, that's via PayPal. You can make a one-time donation or a recurring donation. And the other way to become part of our Coffee Fund cadre is to become a patron of the show via patreon.com. And since the last show, well, we don't have any new patrons since the last show, and that's okay. Hopefully next time, but if not, we do appreciate the ongoing support of our patrons, which are very numerous, and we do appreciate your contributions. So if you want to learn more about the Coffee Fund, wow, did you hear that thing go like all weird, wonky, the music? Oh, I did.
Sounded good to me.
Did it?
Yeah,
Oh,
sounded
maybe it's
good
just
over
my
here.
brain. If you want to learn more about the Coffee Fund, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did. And now it's time for the news.
Stand by for news.
All right, let's start with item C, which is something that just happened recently. Capital Airlines Flight 5759 damaged their nose gear, actually nose wheels, while landing attempt at Macau. How do you pronounce that? Macau? Probably. Macau.
Yeah, that's right, Jeff. It's that little place run next to the Portuguese colony near Hong Kong, Macau.
Oh, okay. They have like a lot of casinos and that kind of thing in Macau.
Oh, yes. It's
I think I've
big.
heard of that.
It's a bit like mini Las Vegas. Well, actually, now it's a bit like a very big Las Vegas. Chinese love gambling.
Oh, okay. Well, they probably don't love flying in an airplane that is trying to land at Macau, an Airbus, I believe it is a 320. Yep, an A320 registration number B6952. And they were attempting to land at Macau and apparently encountered a wind shear, according to this report. And they ended up hitting the runway very hard. In fact, so hard that the two nose wheel tires that are normally there, we're looking at a picture here of the nose gear strut that has no tires associated with it anymore.
Or axle or anything.
Yeah, pretty bad. And apparently one of the engines, at least, ended up getting ingested into the left engine during the landing attempt. And there's a picture of that. And it is a mess. Not sure if it ended up shutting down or not. It's very little information in this report. There might be more information in the incident in the Aviation Herald. I don't have that available to me right at this moment. But anyway, it diverted to Shenzhen, where it landed safely. One of the airport's two runways was shut down after the emergency landing. The other runway was operating normally, and 5 passengers were slightly injured, according to this report. What do you think about that, Nick? Have you ever had a hard landing like that?
Well, no, not that amount of damage. Luckily, I've been fairly fortunate in my career, but it certainly looks like it whacked it on a fair amount. And it's a bit odd because normally if you get sucked into a bit of a hard landing, the main gear go down. I'm a bit surprised at the nose gear, because it's normally the main gear when you, and particularly since the natural instinct is to just tweak it back a little bit, try and cushion that rate of descent. The nose is usually fairly high. So why they ended up bonging the nose wheel on, I'm not sure. Captain Al's an expert on the 320, but I got the impression that Lisa might have had an Airbus product in her
That's
history.
right. She
So
did fly
perhaps she's
with.
the one to tell us how this might happen.
I really have no idea because I've never had a hard landing. But
Every landing that she's done with me on this trip has been hard. No, I'm just kidding. She's never had a hard. No, we've
Is
never.
there
Lisa,
any,
your nose is getting big.
Is there any flap setting that you might be using in wind shear conditions that might have the airplane a bit more nose down? Is there any possibility that you could land nose wheel first?
I really can't think of a situation where you would land nose wheel first, except in extreme wind situation that you were out of control or not in the best control.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the Aviation Herald, which I should have done to begin with. I don't know why we use that particular news item. But here, this is more information from Simon at the Aviation Herald. They were on final approach to Macau's runway 34 and into the flare already when the aircraft encountered wind shear and touched down hard. So maybe it just changed the attitude of the airplane and it just ended up hitting the nose wheel first. They initiated a go around, received indications of left engine, which is a CFM 56 failure, and suspecting gear damage, declared a mayday. The aircraft diverted to Shenzhen. Is that right? Shenzhen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now it's not a long way away, but it's a lot further than Macau is because that's underneath them. So I'm just going, were conditions so severe at Macau that they couldn't make a second approach? Because for me, that would have been the prime option.
Yeah.
But you've just got to say, well, perhaps Macau decided that they were closing the airport or something. But if you've declared a serious enough emergency, I don't care if they say the airport's closed. I'm going to land there. Particularly with what we can see now was quite severe engine damage. To drag that up all the way over to Shenzhen is, an interesting decision.
Yeah, but there's no way he'd have, or unless they had some indication in the flight deck that engine was severely damaged, they wouldn't have known it.
Well, I'm hoping the vibration indicators would be going bananas, Dana, because you look at the damage to their front end there. I'm going, well, the M1 compressor vibration should have been almost off the clock, I would have thought with that. But, you never know. It might have been disabled by the damage or whatever, or they might have decided to shut it down and go single engine to Shenzhen. But interesting. I'd love to, well, I'm sure we will get to see some form of accident report in due course. And
yes,
perhaps we can review it then, but not an easy situation for the crew to deal with because badly damaged airplane. I'm interested to know if they raise the gear afterwards, because that's something else. If you go around and you smack the gear on and if you've damaged it, so the last thing you want to do is to raise the gear. And normally at landing, 320 hasn't got a heap of gas unless he's tankering fuel. With the gear down, that's a really hard decision to go all the way to Shenzhen. So if he raised the gear, he was lucky he got it up, two lucky he got it down afterwards. And so I'm just questioning a few decisions. I'd love to have more information so I could make a properly judged approach.
I found some more for you.
Good. Please go ahead.
To this paragraph. On August 29, 2018, the Aviation Herald received information from a multitude of sources stating that the aircraft touched down on Macau's runway 34 at 7.7 degrees nose up, 123 knots indicated airspeed, and 2.4 Gs, bounced, touched down a second time at 15.1 degrees nose up, between 133 and 144 knots indicated, and 3.4 Gs.
Wow.
The aircraft bounced again, touched down a third time, 7.7 degrees nose down, nose gear first. Both wheels and part of the nose gear structure separated. Debris was ingested by the left engine. Debris destroyed the VHF-1 antenna, causing temporary loss of communication. The damage to the nose gear also prompted the nose gear to permanently indicate being on the ground, preventing gear retraction. So the ground air logic was inhibited. So the airplane was permanently in ground mode, so they could not retract their gear. About 5 seconds after the third bounce, the go-around was initiated. I'd say it was a little bit too late.
Yeah, wow.
I don't mean to be laughing about it because it's not a really funny situation, but oh my gosh.
Sounds like one bounce too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, I quite agree, Lisa.
Wow.
And then they diverted.
And then they diverted.
Well, for heaven's sake, come on, guys. You can't make it any worse. Just do a circuit, put it back down again. For heaven's sake.
That's
Well, I'm pleased they got to Shenzhen because, that could have been so much worse.
Yes, it could have. Wow. Okay, well, check out the.
You gotta wonder with like Lisa's new over with Acme, right? Might be a newbie in training. That's the only reason why I bring that up. It might be, somebody who's doing an OE or a line check or might have been a new hire that was trying to land the airplane. The captain the captain was a new captain. There's any multitude of scenarios here that could have caused that in the wind shear. We don't know how bad that wind shear was, whether it affected the performance of the aircraft in such a negative way. Maybe they were trying to do a recovery. Maybe they contacted the ground in a full recovery and bounced and tried to control the airplane and got slammed down on the ground again. I mean, we don't know all the details on this, but obviously that's an awful high nose attitude to be touching the ground. So that's what kind of leads me towards maybe they were almost in a recovery mode trying to get out of this wind shear, and maybe they were unable to get out of the wind shear, and the wind kind of had its way with it.
Wind shear recovery is full thrust and full backstick, Dana. So
right,
the chance of them making that third contact if they were actually doing wind shear recovery is pretty damn remote. Certainly in the nose down attitude that third impact made. No, they would have powered away as soon as they realized they're in wind shear, and they would have got away with it, I thought.
You would think with the L-1011 in Dallas that would have happened too. They were full power trying to get out of it and slammed them on the ground. So
they're on a microburst though. In that case,
right? Well, we don't know if it was a micro. They say wind shear, it might have been a microburst. We don't see. These are the details we don't know. We don't know all the full details here. So
no, we do. We know everything.
Yeah, we're looking for 50% or better. So
that's right.
Lane brought up a good point with the 15 degrees nose up. Did they strike the tail?
Probably.
Yeah, that's another good one. Yeah,
I don't remember the exact number on the Airbus, but I remember I was scared to go past 10 degrees. That's for sure.
Well, I'm sure, as Nick said, we'll find out more as we tune into the Aviation Herald. Simon's always good about preliminary and final reports, so I'm sure we'll find out more about what happened there. We have a couple updates. The first one, you'll remember back in I can't believe it was that long ago, October 28th of 2016 at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, a FedEx MD-10 10F freighter touchdown at the airport. The flight crew reported hearing a bang as the brakes were applied. The airplane yawed to the left as it decelerated and came to a rest on the left side of the runway, followed by a fuel-fed fire on the left wing. The two crew members evacuated the plane, with one suffering minor injuries during the egress. The plane was damaged beyond economical repair. The final resting position, okay, that's the photo there, caption they're showing there. Investigators found that the failure of the left main landing gear was the result of a metal fatigue crack that initiated within the gear. The crack went undetected and gradually progressed until the gear collapsed. The NTSB also said the interval of 9 years between scheduled overhauls of the main landing gear, which exceeded Boeing's recommendation of 8 years, contributed to the accident. Investigators determined the fatigue crack would likely have been detected during an overhaul. The gear failed 8 years and 213 days after its last overhaul. And anyway, so if you want to learn more about that, they have a link here for the 23-page final report. And yeah, very interesting. So it was not crew error. In this case, it was fatigue, a part in the left main landing gear, which caused it to finally just give up, break. And I think they did a pretty good job of keeping the airplane mostly on the runway. It did slide off a little bit, but yeah. If you're expecting a delivery from FedEx around that time frame and didn't get it, and you live down there in South Florida, that might be why.
There you go.
Aren't there legal ramifications if you exceed the company's, the manufacturer's, third time?
I would imagine.
Recommended overhaul?
Probably if it had been within the time frame that Boeing designated, then perhaps they'd have some liability as far as helping pay for whatever. But if you go beyond that recommendation, I would imagine that the company that decided the new overhaul interval would be the ones that would have to suck it up themselves. I mean, I'm just guessing, but
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking as well. I mean, Boeing would wash their hands of them.
mhm,
But, so I guess FedEx will be getting an interview, will they?
probably so. And then finally, you'll remember this happened earlier this year, I think in March, the crash in Nepal at the Kathmandu.
Was that the one where we saw a fixed camera and this guy just appeared stage left and went boom across the runway?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
And there was some confusion about runway 0220. We had a very long discussion about how that can be confusing. Well, it turns out that they issued I think this is the final report. Nepali investigators say the U.S. Bangla flight 211, and something about the captain's past behavior should have been a warning sign. The pilot of the U.S. Bangla plane that crashed at Kathmandu's airport, killing 51 people, appears to have lied to the control tower during the landing procedure and was smoking continuously inside the cockpit during the 1-hour flight from Dhaka to Kathmandu. According to details of the official investigation led by the Nepal government, a copy of which was obtained exclusively by this media outlet, the Post, Kathmandu Post. Captain Abid Sultan was going through tremendous personal mental stress and anxiety, and a series of erroneous decisions on his part led to the crash of Flight 211. Throughout the flight, Sultan was engaged in erratic behavior that marked a departure from his usual character signs that should have immediately raised flags or red flags. 6 minutes before the landing time, Sultan had confirmed that the plane's landing gear was down and locked. "Gears down, 3 greens," the pilot said, according to the report, referring to the electrical indicator lights inside the cockpit. However, when co-pilot Pratullah Rashid conducted a final landing checklist, the landing gear was not down. Minutes later, the plane carrying 67 passengers and 4 crew members burst into flames after missing the runway during its second landing attempt. The majority of the 22 Nepalis killed in the crash were medical students who had come home on a 2-month leave before their final year results were published. Only 20 passengers survived the crash. Investigators say that the captain had been smoking cigarettes frequently during the hour-long flight. The former Bangladeshi Air Force pilot, who had clocked more than 5,500 flying hours, had not disclosed to the airlines that he was a smoker, leading investigators to conclude that Sultan was undergoing severe mental stress inside the cockpit. When we analyzed the conversation on the cockpit voice recorder, it was clear to us that the captain was harboring severe mental stress. He also seemed to be fatigued and tired due to a lack of sleep, investigators wrote in the report. He was crying on several occasions. That's a big red flag right there.
That's a red flag.
You're flying with somebody and they're crying.
And chain smoking.
And yeah. The voice recorder captured nearly an hour-long conversation between the captain and his co-pilot in the cockpit, further demonstrating Sultan's tensed mood throughout the flight and a complete lack of situational awareness. And this is a quote from the captain. "I don't effing care about safe flight. You F your duty." Well, that's not good. And he said at one point inside the cockpit, that's what he said inside the cockpit. It was not clear whom the pilot was directing the statement at, as the co-pilot was the only crew member present inside the cockpit during the flight. The report also shows that Sultan made multiple abusive statements toward a female colleague, another co-pilot in the company, who had questioned his reputation as an instructor, and the relationship was a major topic of discussion throughout the flight. Records showed that Rashid, the co-pilot, was a passive listener to Sultan's story throughout the flight. Let's see, it goes on further down here in this article. At one point during the flight, according to the details from the audio recorder, the pilot broke down and said that he was very upset and hurt by the behavior of this female colleague, and that she was the only reason he was leaving the company. The captain had expressed his desire to resign a day before the accident, the report says, although he had not submitted any written documents. He said he wished to continue on the job for 3 more months to complete training the co-pilots. He joined this airline, U.S. Bangla, in 2015, and prior to flying commercial flights, he had served in the Bangladesh Air Force, and according to reports, had a history of depression. While in the Bangladesh Air Force back in 1993, he had been removed from active duty after a psychiatric assessment, but he was reevaluated by a psychiatrist back on January 9th, 2002, and had been declared fit for flying. The report said that his detailed medical history was not reviewed by the U.S. Bangla Airlines when he was hired. So I guess they didn't know that he had this history. He did not exhibit any recurring mental issues during the medical examinations from 2002 until 2018. So we have a person that seems very troubled, and there's more details about exactly what happened here. You know, we had talked about the fact that we thought that he was confused about his situational awareness, and so this section of the article talks about that. At 2 p.m., the airport control tower instructed the flight to reduce its speed and descend to 12,500 feet. The control tower cleared the flight to approach the 02 runway. When the crew did not follow the control tower's instructions, the approach controller asked the pilots why they were not holding over this holding point. At this time, based on the cockpit voice recordings, Sultan responded, "Holding will not be required in this case." And then he
I'm gonna remember that one.
I must try that with Heathrow the next time they ask me to go in a holding pattern.
Think about that one in New York we just covered with that air traffic controller. That really would have went over well.
Holding will not be required in this case.
Exactly.
At the let's see. At this time, the aircraft had lost its use of the plane's autoflight guidance system control. Not sure exactly what aspect of that, if the entire autoflight system was not working or whatever. Strong westerly winds blowing at an average of 28 knots pushed the aircraft to the east, which would, in this case, I think would have pushed it toward the runway. The tower informed the crew that they were cleared to land via the 02 side of the runway, but instead the aircraft seemed to be headed for 20, the other side. The report said at this stage there was a complete loss of situational awareness on part of the flight crew. That's when another supervisor controller from the airport tower took over the microphone and cleared the flight to land via 20, assuming that it was the crew's intention to land from that side. The aircraft, however, was struggling to locate the runway and continued to fly to the northeast. When the aircraft descended to around 175 feet above ground level, a ground proximity warning system alarm went off. Remember, there's a lot of high terrain in that area. The tower immediately asked the flight crew about their intention. The captain radioed his intention to land on runway 02. Then air traffic control, while also handling the landing of another aircraft, a Buddha Air that was approaching from 02, cleared flight 211 to land on 02. The information was relayed to the other flight to caution them that there was traffic ahead of them. The aircraft then started to gain altitude. At this point, according to the report, the captain admitted to his co-pilot that he had made a mistake. Local pilots who had been monitoring the development on the radar at the airport premises raised concerns with the tower that the U.S. Bangla pilots appeared to be disoriented and lost. The tower then issued a landing clearance to the flight for either 02 or 20. The CVR revealed that both pilots made several statements that reflected that they had completely lost their orientation of the runway, but the issue was not communicated to air traffic controller. So I guess the cockpit voice recorder recorded their confusion, but they didn't let anybody outside the airplane know. A few seconds later, the co-pilot reported sighting the runway. The captain, however, still appeared confused. Despite the runway in sight, the co-pilot made no call-outs to discontinue the maneuver. Alarmed, the control tower hastily canceled the landing clearance by saying, "Takeoff clearance canceled."
That'll help.
Oops.
The ground.
A lot of stress going on.
No kidding. The ground proximity warning alarm sounded continuously in the cockpit while the aircraft flew as low as 45 feet, right over the domestic terminal building.
Oof.
Nepali airline officials at the time had expressed horror watching the plane fly so close to the tower and had praised the pilot for skillfully avoiding hitting the tower and at least half a dozen fueled planes parked at the international airport's parking bay. Yes, what a great skilled pilot there.
He's very skilled.
Airport officials at the control tower had described the scene that afternoon before the crash as something like a war film, a complete suicidal attempt that nearly blew the tower. The aircraft finally touched down on the ground with only its right landing gear hitting the runway and skidded to crash through the airport's periphery before coming to a halt onto a nearby field. The impact started a fire within 6 seconds because the aircraft had 2,800 kilograms of fuel on board. The investigation commission said that because the crash had a low impact, passengers had high chances of survival, but the rapidly spreading post-crash fire prevented passengers from escaping. Wow, what a tragedy. And what do you say about this? It's crazy.
Well, sitting in my mind primarily is that there was only one pilot on that flight deck who was truly having a nightmare, and that was the captain. So the first officer, I mean, it's an awfully difficult position because I suspect there's a lot of hierarchical pressure on the first officer. There are a lot of countries there where the captain is the ultimate authority and the first officer doesn't really get much of a say in what goes on. But
that's the way it is here in the U.S., by the way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
just kidding.
Yeah, but I mean, this was a classic example of when the first officer should have just said, you take the back seat now. I think you're having a bit of a bad day. Let me just finish this off, and we'll land safely and talk about it on the ground.
Yeah.
Or in Dana's case, take out his baseball bat and whack the captain over the head with it.
Oh, I don't need a baseball bat. I just say I'll knock you out and we'll talk about it later.
Well, there you go.
It's very simple. Yeah, I think this is a situation of CRM not being applied at all. And as you said, is probably the just like the Asiana issue that the hierarchy with the captain. The FO just didn't have the will or the ability to step out of his comfort zone and put in, assert his will. So I agree with you 100%, Nick. I think that's the tragedy in the whole thing is that the FO was just subservient to the captain, and the captain just did what he wanted to do. And
despite the fact the man was obviously incredibly distressed and not really in a fit state to be flying the airplane.
Well,
Ever was. He sounded like he had some mental problems from the get-go, and the fact that they hired him makes you look at the American Airlines and their processes of psychological evaluation and appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah, good point. But I don't suspect they're nearly as strict over there, and where they, take whatever pilots they can get.
Sad.
Yeah, it is a sad story. Well, I guess the best thing now to do would be to go on to the second or third best part of the show. Is that better, Nick?
You're just going to have to think of a different adjective.
Yeah, I have to think of a different. What do you call it?
The nicest part of the show, or the most enjoyable,
most adventurous, or the most something. Come up with something.
Stretch that old brain of yours.
Wow.
All right. Well, let's just do it. Oh, that's not a touch screen.
Captain.
So, Professor.
I'm so confused in this world of screens that are touchscreen and are not touchscreen.
It's kind of funny when it's not a touchscreen, you go to touch the screen anyways.
Mm-hmm. You see crazy. That? You see all the footprints. You don't see footprints on the screens.
But what's really amazing is that the leader in this, Apple, right? They refuse to take their MacBooks and make them touchscreen. At least my latest generation, which I bought just a little bit over a year ago, is still not touchment.
That's because Steve Jobs said that people that use MacBooks and Mac computers don't want touch screens, and that's the reason why they have the iPad or whatever. That I don't think many of us feel the same way.
No,
I think eventually you're going to see an Apple product like a MacBook or a desktop Mac with touch screens. I think it's inevitable.
Well, I'm still having to clean all my fingerprints off my screen.
Yeah, and I was saying it's kind of funny in the airplanes. You'll see our flat screen displays, and you'll see like fingerprints all over them, like somebody's actually trying to do something by touching the screen.
Mine's perfectly clean.
Is it?
That's because I haven't used it since August 8th.
Okay. All right, let's try this again. And now for the nicest part of the show.
Captain, incoming message.
Okay, we were going to do this on the last episode. We didn't get around to it because we talked about being loony And this story is from, or this feedback is from Brian. He says, "What can you tell me about Project Loon? I've been seeing them on flight radar, and even watched one for 2 days while it was around Northern California. Do you pilots get any notifications on them? They're up around 60,000 feet, so that shouldn't bother you. Just curious." Yeah, I've never heard anything, about this at all. I guess they have to get up to 67, 70, 80,000 feet. I don't know where they do that, if they do that in the middle of the night or whatever, where there's no traffic or not. But Loon, of course, Loon LLC is an Alphabet Incorporated, which used to be part of Mama Google, but now Alphabet is the isn't Alphabet the mothership of all the companies, and Google is like a subsidiary, or is it the other way around? Is Alphabet the subsidiary? Anyway, whatever it is, they're working on providing internet access to rural and remote areas. The company uses
like California.
The company uses high altitude balloons placed in the stratosphere at an altitude of about 18 kilometers, 11 miles, to create an aerial wireless network with up to 4G LTE speeds. It was named Project Loon since even Google itself found the idea of providing internet access to the remaining 5 billion population unprecedented and loony. Loon began as a research and development project by X, formerly Google X, but was spun out into a separate company in July of 2018. The balloons are maneuvered by adjusting their altitude in the stratosphere to float to a wind layer after identifying the wind layer with the desired speed and direction using wind data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the NOAA. Users of the service connect to the balloon network using a special internet antenna attached to their building. The signal travels through the balloon network from balloon to balloon, then to a ground-based station connected to an internet service provider, then onto the global internet. The system aims to bring internet access to remote and rural areas poorly served by existing provisions, and to improve communication during natural disasters to affected regions. Key people involved in the project include Rich Duvall, Chief Technical Architect, who is also an expert on wearable technology. And it goes on. The balloons use patch antennas, which are directional antennas to transmit signals to ground stations or LTE users. Some smartphones with Google SIM cards can use Google Internet services. The whole infrastructure is based on LTE. The eNode B component, the equivalent of the base station that talks directly to the handsets, is carried in the balloon. Has a picture here of this very futuristic looking translucent balloon. And but to answer Brian's question, no, I've never heard any NOTAMs or any warnings about these balloons or anything. And as he mentions, they're way up there. We're not flying in that stratospheric range or zone. I guess if we had the only ones that would be flying up there, well, I guess we don't have, do we have any? Probably do, but we just don't know what they are. When the SR-71 was flying, they were flying up there in that area.
Well, U2 is based in Northern California.
Oh, yeah. They get up pretty high, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They probably know where the loons are, I bet.
I bet they do.
And then if we had supersonic transports flying, they would be up in that altitude area as well.
But they look fairly frangible, so I'm assuming they're a bit like weather balloons. They, you can fly into one without hoping to damage your machine too much. And the chances of you hitting one using the big sky theory are pretty remote.
Yeah, I would think so.
My answer to Brian is that I don't get out to Northern California, so I'd never see it.
There you go. There's Dana's answer.
I mean, the chances are you wouldn't actually probably see it anyway, since, if you're up at 60,000 feet, you're not really going to be staring out the windshield.
I think I need to be more specific. I wouldn't see any NOTAMs because I'm not out that way. That's what I really should have continued my statement and finished off with that. Yes, that would be pretty high up to see that little balloon.
But it's got to get up there somehow. So I'm wondering, maybe you could see it as it was, climbing up.
I would wonder if it wouldn't be more like if, like when NASA sends up a satellite or something, they just keep the airspace around where they're sending it up clear. That would be my guess.
Make it restricted airspace.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably what they do. Well, that makes sense.
I
Okay.
mean, they're not the only people tootling around up there, because if you remember, those solar-powered high endurance aircraft are going to be up there as well, performing a similar function, but just a much bigger piece of kit. Now that could possibly cause you some damage.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that answered your question, Brian. We'll move on to James. James says, I guess James just sent, is this James Balch that sent this? Yes, it is. James Balch. He's probably there in the chat room with us today, is he not?
I haven't seen him.
Oh, okay. Not too bad. Anyway, he sent us a link to a story from foxnews.com, the title of which is, well, let me play this first. Woman kicked off American Airlines flight because of cello. A passenger says she was removed from American Airlines flight before takeoff because of the size of her cello, even though she purchased a seat for the instrument. A passenger on board an American... Oh, that was probably the caption to the photo that I deleted from this article. She was removed before takeoff because of the size of her cello, even though she had purchased a seat for the instrument. It claims American Airlines assured her husband she would be able to bring it on board.
Are we talking a very large dessert here? A jello?
No, not a jello, a cello.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
The instrument.
My apologies. Do carry on.
Music in the background. That's not jello music. That's cello
Oh,
music.
is it not? Oh. Right.
Anyway, she said, I purchased 2 round-trip tickets for herself and the cello on the phone directly from American Airlines, told them specifically that 1 ticket is for the cello as cabin baggage. I was told it is absolutely allowed, and she won't have any problem, according to her husband, writing on Facebook. Hugh, a music student at DePaul University School of Music in Chicago, had flown to Miami to perform in a music festival. When I flew from Chicago to Miami, I didn't have any trouble with that, Hugh told WMAQ. The flight crew even gave her a special strap to hold the instrument in place. Oh, didn't know they had special straps for that. All right. Yeah, well, that's American Airlines. They have all kinds of special stuff. The pricey instrument, which Hugh says is worth $30,000, made it safely to Miami with her. However, when she boarded her return flight to Chicago on Thursday, airline crew members asked her to get off the plane. According to Hugh, flight staff told her the cello was too big for the seat, though she insists it met seat size restrictions. Federal regulations allow musicians to carry instruments like cellos in the cabin if passengers purchase a seat for them. And that's what she did. The flight attendants insist she was removed because the aircraft was too small for the instrument. She writes on Facebook that, I guess her husband writes that he believes she was removed because the flight was overbooked. Interestingly, my wife was traveling with a friend who remained on the plane. She told us that after my wife left, 2 other passengers came and sat in her and her cello's seats. The plot thickens. They just kick off passengers when they oversell their tickets using FAA regulations as an excuse. I could have been told those regulations when purchasing the ticket. My wife could have been told those regulations when flying from, they did. They knew the regulations, and I think that she was complying with them, wasn't she?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I have a feeling we're probably not getting the whole story here. We're only hearing kind of from their side of the story. Let's see. I think we have a statement from American Airlines. They say a passenger on flight 2457 from Miami to Chicago was traveling with her cello. Unfortunately, there was a miscommunication about whether the cello she was traveling with met the requirements to fit on board the particular aircraft she was flying, a Boeing 737. There's a problem. It's hard for passengers to actually fit in the seat of a
Yeah, you try and get one into the toilet with you.
Yeah, when I saw that, Jeff, I was immediately started thinking those overhead bins are pretty low in comparison to the passenger seat. So the cello on the seat may not
maybe they
fit.
have the height.
Yep.
Could be. They rebooked the passenger on the flight the next morning on a larger aircraft, a Boeing 767. We provided her a hotel and meal accommodations for the inconvenience. We apologize for the misunderstanding, and customer relations has reached out to her. So I can understand. Maybe there was no problem coming down because it was a larger aircraft, and then in this case, maybe there really was not room for that cello to actually be put into the seat.
Now, if she had booked an aisle seat, maybe it would have been a better scenario. But
Yeah.
probably had a window seat, and there was no way it was going to be able to fit underneath that overhead.
Well, in
bin
that
compartment.
case, surely the crew could have organized that.
Yeah.
Switch seats around.
Or put it in the closet. By the way, James is here and alive, he said.
Oh, hey, James. Good to see you, man. Lurking in the chat room.
Having flown with a few, I won't say precious because that's completely the wrong way, people who have very valuable instruments and pay for a seat and want them to fly with them, the chance of getting it put in a wardrobe, 0.
Why is it so hard to get things put in the wardrobe?
Well, because they just paid for a seat so they can sit beside their beloved Stradivarius, and they ain't going to have it stuffed in some wardrobe by the cabin crew. Not all the tea in China.
Yep. It would be interesting to be a fly on the wall, as they say, and hear the conversation between the passenger and the flight crew. I mean, it could have been maybe contentious, perhaps. Attitude may have been not quite right. I don't know. It's really hard to say.
Well, particularly since they're trying to kick this lady off her flight. Yeah, I suspect tempers did get a bit frayed.
May have been slightly contentious before it got to that point, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, they had plenty of time to let her know that it wouldn't fit. After all, she checked in for the flight. They must have known what aircraft they were going to put her on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know what else to say about that. Do you, Lisa?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Let's move on then. Stuart sends us some feedback. And let's see. Oh, I guess he does say something here. He said, I was reading this article this morning and laughed. Yet another platform for the world to voice its displeasure. The title of the article is New App Allows Passengers to Report Uncomfortable Cabin Conditions. And then he puts in here, passenger, but why is it so hot? Oh, and just look at the app. Everyone feels the same way. Captain, well, it's 38 degrees Celsius outside and we're on a short runway fully loaded. So would you prefer to clear the mountain at the end of the runway for which we need the air conditioning packs off during takeoff, or would you like to be nice and cool as we hit it? Please record your comments in the app for the crew to review shortly before takeoff. Obviously, that's Stuart being very facetious. He said, we have the Edmonton Air Show coming up on the 18th, 19th, 20th of August. Oh, what day is today?
Oops.
Yeah. Well,
Oops.
we must have gotten this a little while ago. Sorry, Stuart. The Edmonton Air Show, he's got a link to that. It's not quite Farnborough or Oshkosh, but you take what you can get. Enjoying the show as always here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Cheers, Stuart. And so here's the article he included a link to in his feedback. A new app released by the Association of Flight Attendants will now allow passengers to report high or low temperatures on board an aircraft. The app, which is available to passengers and crew free of charge, is called, it is a cute name. 2, like the number 2, hot, and the number 2, cold. Too hot, too cold. And as part of an effort to introduce standards for climate control in aircraft cabins. The app can also collect the airline, aircraft type, flight number, date, origin, destination, and phase of flight. The Association of Flight Attendants is hoping that the new app will allow them to collect data in order to support a petition that was filed earlier this month with the U.S. Department of Transportation. The petition that was filed reportedly is pushing for a temperature range of 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit within the cabins. Apparently, maybe they're not communicating this with the pilots.
I guess not. I feel like that's my full-time job is to keep that cabin between 65 and 75 degrees. I feel bad that
we try.
We don't do that.
Yeah, well, it sounds like this app is specifically created to give them ammunition for something. But I say maybe they should try communicating with the pilots and saying it's too hot or too cold. I mean, that's what they do at Acme.
Exactly.
And we try to accommodate them.
Especially
sometimes
on
we
our
succeed.
Particular aircraft.
Yeah, it's difficult on the Mad Dog.
Bloop, bloop, bloop.
Yeah, you'd
bloop.
like
It's-
just
we've-
think about
we
moving the
spent-
knob, and then you watch the temperature thing go like go from 60 degrees to 140 degrees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a challenge,
It is.
but we can conquer it.
Yes. Anyway, what do you think about that app, Dana?
Don't like it at all, because everybody's concept of what the perfect temperature is going to be completely different. If you have a flight going down out of New York down to West Palm Beach, I can assure you everybody's going to want a touch warmer. If you get a flight going to Minneapolis in the middle of winter, people probably want a little chillier before they get it off the aircraft, because, well, they're used to that cold air. So, I just I just think it's giving people too much ammunition. Furthermore, what really should happen is what?
No, I was waving at Steph.
I was like, what? Huh? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
See Steph down there. Hi, Steph. Hi, Steph.
So, Dana, you're supposed to not pay attention to the stuff that's going on here. Just say what you're saying.
I know. Sorry. So, anyways, yeah, I think it's just it's going to give all these people this ammunition for situations that really cannot be controlled on the aircraft at the time anyways, other than letting the crew know that the temperature back there is indeed either too warm or too cold. Just a little tidbit on our aircraft, the Mad Dog, there is only one sensor. It's around row 19 or 20 in the overhead ceiling. So there's really no way for us to control sections like they can on the fabled Airbus back there, Nick. They have different sections on their overhead that they can control forward, back, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's much more difficult on an aircraft like ours to be able to control the temperature as well, and especially during the hot summertime, as we've talked about in the past, it's very difficult to keep the aircraft cool on our aircraft anyways. So people can complain or say that my seat here is at is seat 17 Bravo is hot, and the person behind them would say, well, it's too darn cold. So it's I think it's just opening up a can of worms.
I agree. Wear layers.
Doctor?
Hey, wow, what's going on here?
Doctor.
That's the theme song, the theme music for the good Dr. Steph from her lakeside home. Let's see.
Halfway afraid to try and talk.
Oh no!
This is really bad.
I better turn down the music because we can't even hear her. Oh my gosh, your voice sounds
Terrible.
strained.
Pathetic.
I think the doctor
really
needs to go see a doctor.
I feel fine. I was a little under the weather over the weekend, like just kind of an upper respiratory thing, and I guess this laryngitis is the sequela of that. So, yeah, it's
Ooh.
not real fun.
Sequela.
I'm not gonna hang out for long. Sorry.
Well, you can be there and just sit there and make.
No, because I'll want to chime in and talk, and I really probably should just.
Okay.
Quick recovery. I could be Dr. Steph as well, because I could talk like that. It's not a problem.
No,
I could do that.
let's not do that.
Yeah.
I
it was.
pressure of oxygen is.
Don't they have those robotic things that you can type in what you're thinking and have it speak it for
Like
you?
Stephen Hawking style.
Yeah.
I need one of
Why don't you
those.
try that?
Oh, I'll need-
Lisa,
I'm
sure you
her
can
voice
Google
doesn't
and find
normally sound
something.
like this.
no, hi Lisa. Nice to meet you. Normally I do not sound like this at all. So. Yeah, no, it was bad enough that I actually did not go to my regular clinic this morning to work because I just can't have conversations right now. So
Dr. Steph, this is a family show. I'm going to say it sounds strangely sexy.
you know what? It's funny. It's not like it's, sometimes when you lose your voice a little bit and you get that little like growl to it, but this is just painful.
Beyond that.
And it
Listen
sounds
to
like you need to rest it, Steph, rather than.
Yeah, I need it to come back. So I'm going to.
Yes, quite
Hello.
right.
Dana, I need to remind you.
Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show.
Yes. Well, thank you for making that very strained effort, Steph, to
Yeah.
communicate with us.
Sorry. So
Yeah, I'm sorry you weren't able to make it.
I know. Well, I'll jump in after you guys finish the show so we can talk about plans for next week, assuming my
Okay.
voice returns. I need it
Excellent.
back by tomorrow because I really do need to work. So,
Okay.
all right.
Okay.
Keep drinking
Good
that.
luck.
What is it? Lemon and honey.
Lemon and honey. Yeah, I've been doing that. It's not doing much of anything for me so far.
And I go for the IPAs next.
Yeah, I think I'll just move on to beer. It's
Yeah,
better.
the hops would be good.
Like
Tastes better.
Supercall.
I have that too, but my throat's not sore anymore. So
damn.
just
Just,
gone.
just punch yourself in the throat and be over with it.
Oh man.
All right. Well, we hope you. I hope
Is
your
it
voice comes back.
Staphylococcus?
Staphylococcus. Yeah, close enough.
Oh, so many things we could say there, but we're not.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks,
It's
Steph.
all, it's all medical. It's not. It's you don't need to bust out mass for that one. So
Okay. Excellent. All right. We'll see you later.
all right.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Well, at least you made the effort. That's nice. Okay. Well, I think we should move on to some audio feedback. Brian sent us some audio feedback. Let's see if I can. Brian Juarez. And he had his voice when he recorded this. So let's take a listen, shall we?
Hello, everyone, to the APG crew and community. This is Brian, officially giving my first feedback for the show. I started listening to the show since episode 74, followed on to episode 95, where I went on a 5-year hiatus. And then in the meantime, I finished my private, my instrument rating, commercial, multi-engine commercial add-on. Now I'm working for an aerial survey company in the Philadelphia area, and a way to get my hours and experience to move on to the regionals. Now, I came back and started listening to the show since episode 320. I know I've been gone for a long time. I've been working my way backwards to try to keep up with the show. I know that's probably a bad idea, but also working my way forward. So every time you just post a new show, I listen to it. So I'm catching up to the show in very weird ways, I should say. But anyways, I've been meaning to give some feedback in the past, but I didn't know what to bring up or talk about until this morning when I was listening to episode 334, and you guys brought up the accident of Aeromexico of Durango, Mexico. So I thought it was a perfect opportunity to give some feedback on some information that I know so far. You know, it's been about a week since the accident and in the show as well. So I know by the time you guys record the new one, you guys are going to talk about some of these information. A lot of this information has already been given out. But some insight that I want to share in this feedback about the accident is things that haven't been published or haven't been talked about yet by anyone. So, this is information I know from friends and colleagues and acquaintances that I have within the airline and also within the Mexican ATC organization in Mexico. Or I don't say organization, but the agency, the government agency from that controls the ATC in Mexico. And from personal experience, flying in and out of Durango, because I have family in Durango, and I've been flying in and out of there a lot, and I had the opportunity to fly as a pilot in and out with some friends that have a 172 down there. So, I have some experience flying in and out of the airport as well. But anyways, the first thing I do want to say is that the airline that was operating this flight is not Aeromexico. Many people think that it's the big Mexican legacy airline, a carrier that was involved in this crash. That is not completely true. The airline was a regional airline operated on behalf of Aeromexico. So the regional airline is Aeromexico Connect. That's the name of the regional airline, and it was operating this flight on behalf of Aeromexico. And not everyone, I don't think anyone has noticed this, or many of my friends that I have down in Mexico that are in aviation know this for sure. But I mean, what I mean that hasn't been brought up anyone, I'm talking about news organizations or outlets or any media that has talked about the crash. They all say it's Aeromexico. So I wanted to bring this up and share it with you guys so you guys can fully know and be accurate on your facts, since you guys trying to keep 50% accuracy rating. So I want to help with that. But it was Aeromexico Connect flight 2431 from Durango, Mexico to Mexico City. So that was the airline. The airline is owned by Aeromexico. So it's kind of like if you want to compare American Airlines with Envoy, it's the same way. Aeromexico Connect They have their own aircraft. They hire their own pilots. They hire their own flight attendants. They have their own call signs. So it is a independently operated airline. So do want to give that out there. Now, the other thing I do want to share about this accident, or some of the procedures that are normally in Mexico, especially in Durango, is that in smaller cities like Durango, there's no radar coverage in the low levels side. And when I mean low levels, it's like from 18,000 feet and below. And how they do it is, if you're descending or below 18,000 feet in these areas, you're basically leaving controlled airspace. So leaving 18,000 feet or below, you leave Class A, and then below 18,000 becomes Class G. So Class G airspace basically means uncontrolled. Unless you're in the proximity of a airport like Durango, where these airports are operated as Class Delta airports, or Class Delta airspace, and in the Class Delta in Mexico is kind of like a 10 nautical mile radius from the airport, and then even you're within that radius, and then you're within a Class Delta, so you're controlled by ATC, by Durango Tower, or whichever airport you're going to be nearby. But how is this related to the crash is because basically some of these procedures have to be done in order to take off IFR from these airports. Is you have to, once you get on the runway and you depart and you rotate, there's two ways to depart IFR from these airports that are non-radar or uncontrolled airspaces below 18,000. And one of them is that you depart the airport, and once you break off the runway, you have to maintain a runway heading for about 8 or 9 miles. And then once you're 8 or 9 miles, then you begin a left or right teardrop turn back to the airport. And then 99% of these airports in Mexico have a VOR on station. So that means there's a VOR at the airport. So once they begin that left or right turn back to the airport, meaning back to the VOR, and they get overhead of the VOR, so they're over the VOR. Once they're at that point, they'll join the airway and then go on their route of flight to their destination. Now, this gives them some space to, especially for jets, to climb 18,000 feet within, while staying within a 10 nautical mile radius from the airport. So, meaning, this whole time they're climbing out, they're always staying within 10 miles. So they're going to be within the jurisdiction of Durango Tower. And basically, there's no such set ceiling for Durango Tower, for this Class Delta airports in Mexico. So, for example, Durango Tower can control from the surface up to 18,000 feet as long as it's within the 10 nautical mile radius. So it's a good legal way to keep IFR traffic controlled at all times, is to try to keep them within that 10 nautical mile radius. So that's why they come up with these IFR procedures. If it's not a teardrop turn procedure, it's going to be a DME arc. So you'll depart 8 or 9 miles on a runway heading, so meaning on the radial, and then once you're 8 or 9 miles from the VOR, you'll begin a DME arc to your airway, and then from there you intercept the airway and head out. And then that's for the same concept, to try to keep the aircraft within a close distance to the airport while climbing to 18,000 feet, so they can remain in controlled airspace. Now, why am I bringing this up, or how is this related to the crash? Is basically, that's the two ways, normal ways of departing IFR traffic from these airports. There is a third but unofficial way to do it. Is you can depart the airport, and once you rotate, you start climbing, you can begin a VMC turn, meaning a VFR turn to the left or to the right to your airway. And once you begin that left or right turn to the airway, basically you are to do a flight VFR until you get established on that airway. And once you're established, you can begin climbing out in IFR and in a IFR procedure way, or in IFR and instrument flight rules, I should say. So, like I said, going back, I was just related to the crash. From testimony from the flight crew so far that they've been given out to the airline and to Mexican officials, is that when the crew got to runway 3 to depart, so they were due to depart runway 03, and they got themselves aligned with the runway. They turned on their weather radar, and they noticed that there were some thunderstorms or some CB cells to the north of the airport. So they requested ATC to make a left or right turn. Actually, they requested ATC to make a right turn, VMC visual right turn to the airway, in order to try to beat the storm out of Durango. So they requested that of the ATC, and the ATC approved it. So the plan was to depart runway 3, and once they rotated, to do a right VMC turn to the airway, and then depart to the southeast to Mexico City. And that was the original plan. And obviously, everyone knows what happened, and such and on. So I wanted to share this with you guys so you guys have some insight of what went on, what could have occurred. Of course, none of the this is still an ongoing investigation, and not a lot of facts are out there yet. So, but things that I brought up on this feedback is things that the crew has testified to the airline and to the federal officials in Mexico, and this is information that I know through friends that they're working within the airline. So, they're very well aware of what's going on, and they're keeping me up to date of what's happening while there's accidents being investigated. So. Another thing I do want to mention real quick from my personal experience operating and flying in and out of Durango is that the airport has a ATIS frequency, and this ATIS frequency is published in charts, so in instrument approach plates and airport diagrams. They publicize their ATIS frequency, but the ATIS, there's nothing being transmitted. And I've never had, from personal experience, they never transmit anything on that ATIS frequency. So controllers don't transmit any weather radar, any weather information on that ATIS frequency, which is kind of odd. And from my friends that I also working within the airlines that fly in and out of Durango, have said the same thing to me, is that they rarely say anything on that ATIS. Most of the weather information, they get it from the controller once they're arriving. They make that initial call to the tower, and then the tower will give them the latest information, which also to say that once they give out that information, may not even be up to date. I have experience where controllers in Durango don't update the METAR in a timely manner. So METARs are updated hourly on a regular basis, unless there's a special METAR that comes out. That's when the average conditions or conditions rapidly change, and there is a need to broadcast a new METAR. And I think from personal experience, that's where Durango really lacks on, is that they don't update these METARs quite frequently before the crash. And I think after this accident, things probably will change there, or in that aspect, that they will probably be updating the METAR quite frequently now, because also the information that has been given out about the accident is that the METAR in Durango at the time was broadcasted to be winds from the northeast, so I think it was 070 at 3, it was sky clear, when obviously that wasn't the case. There was definitely different weather going on than sky clear and winds basically calm. So anyways, I don't want to keep this feedback going for any longer than it has to be. I just want to give out that information out there to you guys, and want to thank you guys for the show and everything you guys have been doing so far. I've been liking it, keeping up with it. So and I hopefully you guys enjoy this feedback, and hopefully it gets out there on your show. And once again, I want to apologize for the length of this feedback, but I thought it was pretty important to talk about those facts out there. All right, guys, I'll leave you guys to enjoy the rest of the show, and thanks for having me on, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya.
All right. Well, thanks, Brian, for sending in that feedback. And yeah, so first of all, what you said at the beginning, we're completely familiar with the fact that when an airline is contracted, a regional airline is contracted to fly with a major carrier, they always use the major carrier's name, and they use it in all their advertising. In fact, if you fly an Acme connection carrier, you feel like you're on an Acme airline because all the colors are the same, and they even use the name, the major airline's name, etc. And so we're very, very familiar on this show with the news media not even bothering to usually bothering to straighten out the fact that it's not, like, for instance, we had an issue on the last episode with the FAMs that hadn't introduced themselves, so the crew didn't know that there were FAMs on board, and they declared an emergency. And in this case, the news article made the point that even though it was a United flight, blah 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 blah, it was operated by Republic Airlines, and so at least they did a good job in that case. But that's usually not the scenario. So yeah, we completely understand that this was not actually the mainline Aeromexico that operated the flight, but it's one of its regional contractors. So with that said, all the explanation about how they get off of the airport in a non-radar IFR environment, etc., to me just seems like it makes no difference whatsoever, because this incident occurred on the takeoff, not anything to do with the transition to the high altitude structure, etc. They were on the runway, they turn their radar on, they see some thunderstorm cells, and they want to try to beat the storms from hitting the airport and shutting down their operation, and they went ahead and commenced the takeoff anyway. And so I think most of the points that you were making, or at least the people that that are investigating that are making, I don't see how there's any relevance at all to what the lower altitude and higher altitude structure is, the non-radar IFR procedures, etc. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I completely lost where he was going with this, other than he was giving us a complete and total rundown on what the entire IFR procedure out of Durango is, and all the experience related to it. So yeah, I agree with you, Jeff, that listen, it was line the aircraft up on the runway, take a look at the radar, look at the conditions, make a judgment call at that point, and go from there. So,
and I don't care what the ATIS is saying about anything, because that's could be an hour old, and
it could be,
when
could
you're
be
having
more
thunderstorm, or more than that, and thunderstorms are very dynamic. I mean, when they recorded the ATIS, there may not have been a thunderstorm within 25 miles, but by the time they were ready for takeoff, guess what? They developed. So
of course. So yeah, I mean, thank you for that, Brian. Point well taken on the feedback. We do really appreciate it, but in all honesty, I think it just comes down to make a decision at that time for what you have facing in front of you.
Yeah. Anything to add, Nick?
Nope.
Liz? I mean, Lisa. Sorry.
Second time today
I
I've
did
been called
that.
Liz. Hi, Liz.
I was making a little behind the scenes action. Our producer, Liz, and I were communicating during or before we left. Was it this morning? Out of here? Yeah.
One of those flights.
Yeah, one of these flights.
first
And I get up and I stand and talk to the people in the back of the airplane before, usually about 10 minutes before we go. And I was introducing First Officer Liz, but her name's not Liz, it's Lisa. So I think that I had Liz on my mind because I was communicating with Liz about today's show. And she said, yeah, my name's not Liz. I went, oop, sorry. Or no, or maybe somebody else, one of the flight attendants came up. Is her name Liz or Lisa? I went, yeah, it's Lisa. Sorry. So I made another PA. I said, sorry, I called her by the wrong name.
Well, you remember, I was going to say, remember when you're growing up and your grandparents were always calling you by the wrong name? Well, there's your excuse, Jeff. I mean, and they both begin with L, so there you go.
What are you talking about, you little young little whippersnapper, you?
Robert,
I'm going to take you over my knee and spank you.
All right, Peter. Who's Peter?
And sorry again, Robert or Richard or whoever you are in Washington, D.C. I know it's Robert. Sorry. Okay. Let's see. Shall we move on to item number 5? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I always like a good rat story.
Do you? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we have one for you.
Usually they're dancing around the galley.
That's true. At least that's the only time you'd see a rat on our airplane would be in the galley. Sean from Portland, not Maine, so Portland, Oregon, of course, sent us some feedback. He says, quick question on a device I recently heard about for the first time. Apparently, some airliners are equipped with a dangling propeller called a RAT, a ram air turbine, or turbine if you prefer, if you're in the UK or Europe. As a private pilot and av geek,
Yeah, a turban is a thing.
I know it's the thing they wear on their head. Thank you. We've had this conversation before. As a private pilot and av geek, I was surprised that this topic had remained until now completely unknown to me, and unless I've missed it, hasn't been mentioned on the show before. Question mark. I think over the years, I think we have mentioned
on it.
ram air turbines before,
That
because I
might be
remember
Rick
being
talked
corrected
for about 15 hours about one.
Oh, yeah.
But apart from that, I don't think we've talked about it at all.
And that was just one show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Says, okay, I probably missed it. You all talk about everything. Well, never mind. At first, I couldn't reason out why such a device would ever be needed, since I presume most, if not all, of these airliners are also outfitted with APUs, which can generate electricity in flight. But I suppose if one ran out of fuel, then the APU wouldn't offer much help, whereas the RAT can at least power hydraulics, pressurization, and minimal equipment. Any empowering knowledge the crew can drop on this airy subject? Ooh, good one. Rimshot insert. Do any of the big birds you fly have a big, seemingly useless, dangling appendage? And again, that is from Sean, Portland, Oregon. And then he or included here some interesting pictures of a rat and a tweet at the end of this item. And the tweet is from Stephen L. Starkman, at Stephen Starkman. And his tweet is, I smell a rat, an Air Georgian CRJ arriving Toronto, runway 23 at 4:44 p.m. Saturday, August 11th, 2018. So have a couple pictures of this CRJ coming in. And there's like a little panel on the nose on the right side, lower right side, and the panel door is open, and from it is extending. It doesn't look like a rodent. It looks like some kind of a fan thing with a propeller on it.
Just to keep the nose gear cool. Where the hell do they put the radar on that thing? They got 2 landing lights and a damn rat. Where's the radar scanner?
It's just a very tiny little radar.
It must be the size of a dinner plate.
I think you're right. Doesn't seem to be that it would be that large, because there's a lot of stuff up there in that nose.
Yeah, F-16 size.
So I'm not sure. I can't recall if I know that 727 didn't have one. I know the Mad Dogs don't.
Airbus has one.
Airbus, yeah, the Airbuses have them. The L1011 may have had. I don't remember, to be honest.
I don't think the L1011 had the rat on it.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so.
So, Nick, perhaps you can enlighten us.
Yeah, we got one.
Rat.
Yeah,
Okay,
we got one. I mean, it's a clever device. If you're on an airplane that is like all electrics, you got 30 minutes worth of battery power if you lose everything, which isn't a lot of use if you can't power the flight controls, because then you'll just crash with all the pretty instruments glowing at you. So that's not much use. So in the case of 4-engine failure and various other similar problems where you're going to lose all the hydraulics, a rat pops out of the front of the flap housing on the right hand side, close to the middle, and it's a bit like this one, and it's just it's something for nothing. They're great devices, because whilst you're flying, it'll keep spinning, and whilst it's spinning, it'll pump something. It could power a generator, but in our case, it powers a hydraulic pump. But once the hydraulic system has got pressure on it, then brilliant. You can do all sorts of clever tricks with that. And in our case, we've got an emergency electrical generator that runs from the hydraulic system. So the hydraulic system powers the generator, which backs up the batteries and gives us AC/DC power. And so now we've got hydraulics and electrics run from that clever little propeller stuck out in the slipstream. So they automatically deploy in the event of certain emergency situations. They're kind of once only, so they're just a spring bangs them out at the flat into the slipstream, and then you can't really retract them, no point. And they wear away, and they'll run throughout the entire sort of speed regime down to about 140 knots when they start to lose power. So you can put the airplane down. I'm talking about an A340-600 here. So you can put the airplane down on the runway, and then it'll start to peter out as you slow down on the runway. It's a get you home device. So that's what they're for, really. If you recover the situation, so you've lost some engines or lost all your engines, and the rat comes out, keeps you flying while you relight something. When you get the engines back, which is really kind of what it's designed as, it's designed to give you that temporary control of the aircraft while you fix whatever the problem is, then it's going to be stuck out for landing. It's going to stay out there for a little while. So you just relax and fix everything else, and then just divert, and everyone will go, oh, look, there's a little funny thing. But to be fair, on an airplane the size that I fly, you don't really notice it very much because it's quite small. On a little CRJ like that, it actually looks quite big, doesn't it?
The whole thing's yawning.
Sticking out the front. Yeah, exactly right.
So did you say that this was something that in the system logic automatically deploys? It's not like you hit a button, rat.
We have both options, so it should automatically deploy. And in those drills where it is required to deploy, if it, for some reason, the automatics haven't worked, then an extra line will appear on the emergency checklist that will require us to push it out. And there's a little button under a red guard just over the captain's head, and he just reaches up, pushes the button, and out comes the rat.
And so that was strictly for hydraulics, and then with the hydraulic pressure, you can run an emergency generator. Is that what you said?
Exactly right. Okay. Yes.
Excellent. Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, most of the older aircraft didn't necessarily require electrics to really fly them, whereas on the Airbus product, it's far more critical. I don't know about the newer generation Boeing, like the 777 or the 787 or the newer next generation 73s. I don't think they had them on the older 73s, but I don't know about the newer.
Do you know anything about that, Lisa?
I don't know anything about that.
Okay. Liz, do you know anything about that? I'm just kidding. Yeah, I would imagine that airliners that are using fly-by-wire technology, like the 787 and future aircraft, will probably all be equipped with rats. I'm guessing. I don't know that to be a fact, but anybody in our chat room chiming in with that information as of yet? No? Okay.
No, but Nico is asking what drag penalty. It's tiny. It's not a significant drag penalty. And quite honestly, compared with a bunch of dead engines, it's better to have a tiny drag penalty.
Yeah. So losing complete control and crashing.
Yeah, we don't worry about it too much.
Crashing is a drag, man.
At that point, you're not too worried about going to your destination and whether you're going to run out of fuel getting there. You're just looking for the closest piece of concrete to stick it on.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember that airplane, I think it was an Airbus 330 or 300 that landed in the Azores when they had
330.
Yeah, 330. Yeah, ran out of fuel, over the ocean. So they
ran it out of fuel.
Yep. Yeah, so it's that's a good thing they had that.
Yeah, to be fair, they had a fuel leak, but then they pumped all the fuel into the tank with the fuel leak, which wasn't the cleverest.
Yeah, I guess so. Half of it, and half of it was self-imposed.
Yeah,
complete fuel starvation.
Exactly right. Oops.
Yeah, but at least the guy that flew the airplane was had some skills. So a glider pilot,
and he had a good half hour to work out what he was going to tell the company.
Yeah, could this have possibly happened without it being pilot error?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get our story straight.
Yeah.
I changed the subject at all, but anybody recognize one of these?
Yeah,
E6B?
it's a
An
Dalton
E6B, yeah, I'm
confuser.
just going through some old stuff. I just came across it.
We use that every single flight on the Mad Dog.
How in the world do I use this?
The Aussies
Wind correction angle.
completely circular. They call it a whiz wheel, which
Yeah.
we used to use a bit. But then someone invented a computer. Oh, there you go. Is that a whiz wheel?
It's not a whiz wheel, but it's how to enter holds. So I need to put that back into my flight case so that I have that.
Just in case you need to enter a hold one day.
I don't think you're going to need to use that day.
No?
No.
You're flying with me.
Oh, okay. Well, not anymore.
That's true. I miss you.
I miss you too. Oh,
You found a much better replacement.
having a moment.
Right, Lisa?
Yeah.
As she chuckles.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, let's move on, shall we? Let's see. Item number 6. They've come to vacuum the room. That's our drone sound effect there. Autonomous drone. This is from Chris, by the way. Autonomous drones can herd birds away from airports, which is, wow, that's weird. Drones aren't usually allowed to go near airports unless they serve a purpose, like herding flocks of birds away from airspace where they could put planes full of people in jeopardy. Manually controlled drones can be unreliable, though. If the operator gets too aggressive and spooks the birds, the flock could scatter and become even more unmanageable. That's why a team of researchers from Caltech have developed an algorithm that teaches unmanned aerial vehicles how to autonomously and effectively herd birds away from airport airspace. And then it's a really interesting article. According, I think it's based on a study published by the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, the IEEE. Transactions on Robotics studied flock dynamics. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but bird flock dynamics, including how birds maintain formations and how they respond to threats along the edges of the flock to develop their mathematical model. See, if the birds flying along the edge detect external threats, they make course changes that affect the birds next to them, creating a domino effect. We've all seen that, a flock of birds and like starlings or whatever, and like the edges kind of move, and then the whole thing kind of, moves reflexively, like the domino effect. And that they said that, yes?
I was going to say, I would just have to say no flocking way.
Yes, flocking way.
If you want to watch flock dynamics, you just need to go to a pub when there's a hen party and her bride there and watch how they.
Wow, it's amazing how we can turn a study by the IEEE and bird flocking dynamics into some kind of a pub joke.
Yeah,
but I like it though.
Here's the big question: what would you trust, an AI controlling a drone near an airport or a human operator?
A human operator, but apparently human operators can't react quickly enough or something. I don't know. Read about it in this article that Chris so happily forwarded to us or sent to us. It is actually interesting, by the way. I did learn something, believe it or not. But of course, if you're me, every single day you're learning things because you don't remember what happened the day before.
Or names of people right next to you.
Yeah. This person next to me.
I think it's a good concept. I mean, if you've got a lot of migrating birds and like Canada geese, they're a nightmare. They're big and cause you a lot of damage, and they've got known transit patterns. Certainly through the UK, they do. I don't know about Canada and the States. So when you can get a drone that will control them, and they're quite disciplined birds, like they fly in formations and they follow one bird at the front there and they change lead, etc. So I can just see how it would work there. But if you're just trying to control a bunch of vagrant pigeons that are loitering around the airport, I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. So I think in the right situation, it could well be of value. But for the average airport, not so sure about that.
Yeah, probably not. Well, anyway, it's interesting nonetheless. And
it is.
Speaking of interesting and the best part of the show, bar none, it's time now for the old pilot's plain tale.
Oh, do we have to? No,
Yeah.
I'm only kidding. It's fantastic.
Okay, buckle up. Here we go.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales, The Cargo Gods.
It's a remote place on a remote island in Melanesia, that area of the Pacific Islands to the northeast of Australia. That includes Papua New Guinea and Vanuatu. The terrain is rugged and almost inaccessible, except to the indigenous people of the area. They live in an isolated way, in the same way that they have for centuries, akin to the people of the Stone Ages. They've rarely seen someone with white skin. In their warm tropical climate, the Melanesians wear few clothes, but they decorate their bodies with garish paints and leaves, and they wear large necklaces of bones and ornaments, some of which they skewer through their noses. As the sun sets, they gather on a high ridgeline, nearly 9,000 feet above the ocean that surrounds the island. Here they have built something that you and I might find strangely familiar. On the top of the ridge, they have carved a long, straight strip of flattened earth edged with stakes. At one end is a roofed tower made out of bamboo poles wound together with jungle creeper. A platform is near the top where some men sit looking out over the smooth strip of earth, along the edge of which sit groups of natives who gaze attentively up into the sky. At the other end sits what at first glance is an aircraft. Closer inspection reveals something that is crude but recognizable. There is the shape of a wing atop a fuselage with a tail, but it was never made to take to the air. It's built from branches and covered with leaves, but it's lined up as if to take off. In the fast disappearing light, a fire has been lit, which is passed along to set torches ablaze along the runway and even up in the control tower. A little airfield has been created for the cargo planes, for these people worship the machines that pass over them on their way to the big airfield on the edge of the island, where they refuel on their journey between Hong Kong and Australia. They have seen the aircraft land at the big airfield and disgorge prizes of great wealth. They don't understand where they've come from, but believe that they must be from above the clouds, where their ancestors live in paradise, and that they bring untold riches. Somehow the white men at the airfield have fooled their ancestors into sending the planes to them instead of the villagers, their descendants. So they build their own landing strip in the hope that their ancestors will send some of the metal birds down and shower them with cargo, for these people belong to a cargo cult. The term cargo cult was coined in 1945 by Norris Bird, an old Territories resident, who wrote one of the first published analyses of the phenomena after the Second World War. The sudden appearance during the war of soldiers from both sides, first the Japanese and later the Australians and Americans, introduced the unsophisticated natives of the remote islands to a level of technology that was far beyond their wildest imaginations. The pilots who flew the Douglas C-47 Skytrains, the C-54 Skymasters, and the Curtiss C-46 Commandos would have no idea that their presence in the air over these primitive tribes would have such a profound effect upon them. Up to that point, the only real contact tribesmen had with the Western world was through a few missionaries who tried to prod them into Christianity. The cult got its biggest boost when American troops by the thousands were dispatched to the New Hebrides and other islands, where they built large military bases. The bases included hospitals, airstrips, jetties, roads, bridges, and corrugated steel Quonset huts, many erected with the help of hundreds of local men recruited as laborers. Of course, where the US Armed Forces go, so go the legendary PXs with their seemingly endless supply of chocolate, cigarettes, and Coca-Cola. For men who lived in huts and farmed yams, The Americans' wealth was a revelation. Almost daily, cargo aircraft would land and offload vast amounts of cargo wealth or drop them haphazardly from the skies on parachutes. The troops paid them 25 cents a day for their work and handed out generous amounts of goodies. The Americans' munificence dazzled the men, as did the sight of dark-skinned soldiers eating the same food, wearing the same clothes, living in similar huts and tents, and operating the same high-tech equipment as white soldiers. One tribe, under Chief Isaac, believed that a man that they called John Frum appeared to a group of elders and now led them in their belief. This mythical white man led Chief Isaac's tribe and others into a cult of followers. In 1943, the U.S. command, concerned about the movement's growth, sent the USS Echo to Tanna with Major Samuel Patton on board. His mission was to convince the John Frum followers that, as his report put it, the American forces had no connection with John Frum. He failed. The villagers believed that their Messiah was responsible for sending the generous US military and its cargo to them. At the war's end, the US military unwittingly enhanced the legend of their endless supply of cargo when they bulldozed tons of equipment, trucks, jeeps, aircraft engines, supplies, off the coast of Espiritu Santo. During 6 decades in the shallows, coral and sand have obscured much of the watery grave of war surplus, but people can still see tires, bulldozers, and even full Coke bottles. The locals wryly named the place $1 Million Point. After the war, when the tribesmen returned to their huts, they were convinced that John Frum would soon join them and hacked a primitive airstrip out of the jungle to tempt the expected American planes from the skies. Across the South Pacific, thousands of other cargo cult followers began devising similar plans, even building bamboo control towers strung with rope and bamboo aerials to guide in the planes. In 1964, one cargo cult on New Hanover Island in Papua New Guinea offered the US government $1,000 for Lyndon Johnson to come out and be their paramount chief. But as the years passed with empty skies, almost all the cargo cults disappeared, the devotees' hopes crushed. Chief Isaac was asked, "John promised you much cargo more than 60 years ago, and none has come. So why do you keep faith with him? Why do you still believe in him?" Chief Isaac grinned and replied, "You Christians have been waiting 2,000 years for Jesus to return to earth," he says, "and you haven't given up hope." The islanders believed that their own dead ancestors continued to influence the communities of the living, and that their ancestors would one day come back to life and distribute to them unimaginable wealth. Therefore, they reasoned that the white people must have connections to their own ancestors who would logically be the only ones powerful enough to rain down such wondrous riches. So they set in motion a plan to bring back the cargo. They had surreptitiously learned the secrets of summoning the cargo by observing the practices of the American airmen, sailors, and soldiers. The islanders set to work clearing their own kind of landing strips, and they erected their own control towers strung with rope and bamboo aerials. They carved wooden radio headsets with bamboo antenna, and even the occasional wooden air traffic control tower. Day after day, men from the village sat in their towers, wearing their headsets as others stood on the runways and waved the landing signals to attract cargo-bringing airplanes from the sky. More towers were constructed with tin cans strung on wires to imitate radio stations. The religions introduced by missionaries were completely inconsistent with islanders' long-held beliefs, yet the natives could not deny the call of the cargo. The people therefore attempted to reconcile their existing beliefs with the missionaries' teachings, a practice which led to some strange interpretations. In New Guinea, one resulting version of Christianity described a god named Anus, who delivered cargo of canned meat, steel tools, rice, and matches to Adam and Eve. When they discovered sex, Anus ejected them from Eden and struck them with a flood. On one island, villagers clothed themselves in homemade U.S. Army breeches, painted USA on their bare chests and backs, and ran a replica of Old Glory up the flagpole alongside the Marine Corps emblem and the state flag of Georgia. Barefoot soldiers then marched in perfect step in the shadow of Yasur, the island's active volcano, with red-tipped bamboo like rifles slung over their shoulders. For a long time, the natives accepted the European mission as the means by which the cargo would eventually be made available to them, but they found that acceptance of Christianity did not bring the cargo any nearer. They grew disillusioned. One leader began to put about that it was not the whites who made the cargo, but the dead ancestors. To people completely ignorant of factory production, this actually made good sense. White men did not work. They merely wrote secret signs on scraps of paper, for which they were given shiploads of goods. On the other hand, the Melanesians labored week after week for pitiful wages. Plainly, the gods must be made for Melanesians somewhere, perhaps in the land of the dead. The whites who possessed the secret of the cargo were intercepting it and keeping it from the hands of the islanders to whom it was really consigned. In the Madang district of New Guinea, after some 40 years' experience of the missions, the natives went in a body one day with a petition demanding that the cargo secret should now be revealed to them, for they had been very patient. So strong is this belief in the existence of a secret that the cargo cults generally contain some ritual in imitation of the mysterious European customs, which are held to be the clue to the white man's extraordinary power over goods and men. The believers sit around tables with bottles of flowers in front of them, dressed in European clothes, waiting for the cargo aircraft to materialize. Europeans who have witnessed outbreaks inspired by the cargo cults are usually at a loss to understand what they behold. The islanders throw away their money, break their most sacred taboos, abandon their gardens, and destroy their precious livestock. They indulge in sexual license, or alternatively, rigidly separate men from women in huge communal establishments. Sometimes they spend days sitting gazing at the horizon for a glimpse of the long-awaited aircraft. Sometimes they dance, pray, and sing in mass congregations, becoming possessed and speaking with tongues. Of course, the cargo never comes. The cults, nevertheless, live on. If the cargo does not arrive on schedule, then perhaps there is some failure in the magic, some error in the ritual. New breakaway groups organize around purer faith and ritual. The cult rarely disappears so long as the social situation which brings it into being persists. So, my fellow flyers, be you enjoying a meal in your comfortable seats or driving the thing up front, have a thought for what is going on beneath you. Your very presence in the air may be driving some poor tribesmen into desperate straits as they try to lure you down onto their primitive landing strip so that they can loot you of your cargo that is rightly theirs, gifts from their ancestors. If you enjoy Plain Tales, please pop over.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah.
How rude.
Sorry. The guy just keeps on talking and talking, and just
He does. He never shuts up. No, I'm only kidding.
Another-
It's
another-
great.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
I'll shut up. I was going to say another great Plain Tales.
Yeah, I agree. Cargo cult. Interestingly, while looking at the chat room while the Plain Tale was playing, Jim Howard says cargo cult programming is a thing in software development also. It means a programmer who relies on cutting and pasting from code he doesn't really understand. That's weird.
Yeah, that the term has been coined by various modern organizations to describe a similar. Oh, pardon me. They're speaking. A similar
that again?
effect.
What was the beer trying to say?
It was trying to say, "Go away, leave me alone."
Stop talking.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think cargo accounts are a big thing now, but certainly in the 70s and 80s they were common. My father explained, because he flew around Australia and up around PNG in just after the war, when they were growing, because the all the armed forces that had been populating that area and infusing the islands with all this amazing technology and flying in regularly suddenly disappeared once the war was over. And but the civilian guys that occasionally popped in there began to realize that something was going on. I mean, the research from this included an awful lot of anthropological terminology and theories that I went way over my head concerning this, but I just found it fascinating that these people were caught up in the drama of what was going on and tried to make sense of it in their own way, and these strange religions developed.
Very, very strange. Very interesting as well, and entertaining as always. Thank you, Old Pilot.
You're welcome.
All right, number 7, Jay. He says, greetings once again from Sydney, Australia.
G'day, mate. Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
He even recorded a little audio there. Thank you, Jay. It's been a few months since my last feedback, so as a reminder, I'm the guy who is currently a private or a PPL and in training for a CPL, and who moved to Australia specifically for flight training from the UK. First of all, I wanted to add my belated congratulations to Captain Dana on his upgrade. Yay! And to say that he is an inspiration to those of us who make a career change to follow our aviation dreams.
Oh, that's me an inspiration to anybody?
You're a perspiration to many of us, Dana.
I know. Hey, Jay, thank you very much for that, for those accolades. Appreciate it.
Very good. No, he's not from Accolade. He's from...
no, Accolades.
Okay. Just wanted...
Wow.
I just would like to chip into the recent discussion regarding flight sharing platforms such as Wingly and others that are likely to become more and more prevalent in this age of peer-to-peer services. A friend of mine back in the UK is currently building time and has recently decided to sign up as a pilot for Wingly. He's a great guy, but my experience with him as an individual highlighted to me exactly where the flaw in platforms such as Wingly lie. A few years ago, we took a car journey from Edinburgh to London, and to say, is it Edinburgh? I always mispronounce that, don't I? Edinburgh?
No, you're fine.
Edinburgh. Okay.
It's Edinburgh.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's
Edinburgh.
Farnborough.
Edinburgh is not how the locals would say it.
Edinburgh, right? To London, and I'll try to clean all this up in post, but probably not. And to say his car was poorly maintained was an understatement. So again, so we have all that in context. Let me reread that sentence. A few years ago, we took a car journey from Edinburgh to London, and to say his car was poorly maintained was an understatement. The oil was almost non-existent, brake pads worn almost bare, and 2 of the 4 tires dangerously underinflated. We made it there safely, but I couldn't help but feel that those sorts of traits in his personality, the "it will be all right" mentality, is exactly the opposite of what you would hope for in a pilot. Now that he is a pilot, albeit a lowish hours PPL, I can't help but feel that the people who sign up to fly with him may not know what they are letting themselves in for. In short, whilst we would all fly with friends who we know and trust, we probably also know people that we wouldn't necessarily choose to get into the air with. Wingley removes any personal knowledge of the pilot that would otherwise serve as a potential warning of risky or unreliable behaviors. So that's just my 2 cents. Having said all that, I'm really unsure about how such things can be legislated against. It will be an interesting issue to watch over the next few years, that's for sure. Okay, that's all for me. Thanks to all of you for the great service to our community you do with this podcast. Blue sky, no wait, starry skies. I'm doing night VFR currently. Tailwinds, etc. Jay from Sydney, Australia.
Good day, mate. Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
That's Jim Carrey from, I think, Dumb and Dumber. I'm not sure of exactly what movie that was from, or maybe that was from one of his pet detective movies. Does anybody know? I'll bet I know somebody in the chat room that would know. Come on, main man. Which movie, which Jim Carrey movie was that from? Do you know? Okay, while we wait for their answer, let's continue with 8. Sean. He says, does this qualify as FOD? And so I guess I have to click on this. The picture's not in the feedback, so we're going to look on Facebook. And this is from, a little bear running across the ramp.
Is it a bear?
It's yeah. And some very loud piece of machinery. Okay. That's from the I'm leaving on a jet plane. I'm sorry. That's the title of his post. The Alaska Life. And apparently somebody caught video of a ramp somewhere up in Alaska at Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. And there was a bear running around the ramp. Very cute. Little baby bear, looks like.
Yeah.
And
can't be far
so
behind
the
you.
answer, does that qualify as FOD? I guess it could. If it was sucked into an engine or whatever.
Yeah, if you jump down an engine or choose your hydraulics, I guess.
Yeah.
Or goes to the engine, they can make dinner. They have some
good bear meat.
Some good beer meat.
All right.
Hamburg beer.
Bears poo anywhere other than in the woods?
That's a good question, Sean.
They poo wherever they want to. No one's going to stop them.
So he says, would this be considered FOD, or does the bear need to make a deposit before it's considered debris? For that matter, do bear poo anywhere other than in the woods? And again, I think he may be confused with our show and confusing it with some kind of a nature show or something. I don't know.
Could be a hazard.
Yeah. Well, Sean, thank you for the humorous question. Let's see. We have some more audio feedback. This one from Thomas. Hello once again, APG crew. Wanted to drop you another line regarding a question that's been sitting on my mind for a while. You'll be relieved to know I trimmed a whole 2 minutes off the time from my last feedback, but I once again must apologize for my wordiness. Just for grins, I've attached some of the photos like before, as photography is my main hobby, and my other main subject matter besides aircraft, fire apparatus, is also fitting for this feedback. Here are some ARF, air rescue fire fighting. Is that what that stands for? Yeah, I think so. Rigs for your pleasure, for your viewing pleasure. So we'll put all this stuff in the show notes so you can see these really cool pictures of firefighting vehicles. And now let's listen to Thomas's audio feedback.
Hey, APG crew, this is Thomas, just reaching out to y'all with another piece of feedback, and something that's been on my mind for a little bit, but finally decided to send it in as a question after listening to your last episode, 335, hopefully not dating the feedback too much by saying that. But now that we have, we're 3 captains regularly on the show with Captain Dana, Captain Jeff, Captain Nick, kind of wanted to get all of your opinions on this and just some feedback from obviously 2 different companies, at least pilots. What training are you given regarding handling emergencies beyond obviously actually controlling the aircraft, getting the aircraft down safely, and so on? And when I say that, what I really mean is if you have an passenger cell phone, as for instance what you talked about in this last episode, they kind of triggered my memory on this. or if you have fire indication, depending on if it's fire in the luggage hold, if it's fire in the cabin, fire in an engine, whatever the case may be, the description that's just being given to you by a flight attendant potentially. How are you trained, or what training do you receive to be able to make that call to go ahead and evacuate the aircraft versus having your passengers essentially shelter in place, stay on the aircraft until fire rescue personnel can assess the situation? So I don't know if it happens, I guess it could not happen at all, or I don't know at what level it happens. Is it something that's covered and recurrent? Is it something that you go over during CPL, ATP, somewhere in that initial training process? But is there sort of a guidelines and best practices? Obviously we all try to learn. Everybody, in any industry looks at past, examples of positive and negative outcomes to try to learn from. But is there anything that your company, if you can speak to this, I don't know what you are and aren't allowed to kind of talk about as far as company specific training, but what are you given as far as a resource to kind of guide you in making that determination? Or does it truly just come down to your personal opinion? And I know we've talked about stuff independently on the show before where, Captain Nick, I recall specifically talking about, why was this flight diverting for this, or why was this flight evacuated for this? So, does it really truly just come down to you as a personal captain? Or, does the company kind of have an SOP in place that at least sets a guideline for you in making that call? Second part of this question that I think kind of goes hand in hand, and actually got it from the guys over at Triad on the Opposing Bases podcast a few weeks back. When you listen to ATC tapes, a lot of guys deliver their fuel remaining, when they declare a Mayday, it's souls on board, fuel remaining. Their fuel remaining in time. However, really what is needed or desired is fuel remaining in pounds. And the reason for this, having a little bit of background and knowledge about the fire rescue side of things, and I'm going to sound like a dog now because I'm talking about ARF, that would be air rescue firefighting. But when ARF is, announced or dispatched to a Mayday, they are trying to figure out the burn time, essentially, as morbid as that may seem, to figure out how much fuel is going to be on board the aircraft. And the way they calculate that is by pounds. They're not concerned with your flight time remaining, and they don't really know how to calculate that backwards, since they don't know the specific, configuration of your aircraft, your burn times, based on whatever emergency could be going on. They just need to know pounds so that they can make a general calculation on what kind of resources they're going to need on the ground. Just like you say, souls remaining, so that you know what kind of EMS response is required. So when you go into training, is that something that's covered? Are you told that you should deliver your fuel in pounds when you declare a Mayday, or is that something that's really dependent on ATC requesting it from you? Because obviously your task is saturated normally during a Mayday. You may not think about how to deliver your fuel, but is that something that's covered, or is it really just dependent on ATC personnel asking you specifically fuel in pounds remaining? Or fuel remaining in pounds. So beyond that, is there any other training you receive as far as talking to personnel on the ground, dealing with personnel on the ground in an ARF response? So talking with whoever the point person is, typically there would be one person that would contact you on ground or on another given frequency. And, I know it can be confusing. There's no consistent call sign. There's not like fire departments do not all have one call sign. They're all different wherever you may go. You may have red one, crash one. You could have ARF one, any myriad of different call sign options depending on what airport you're at. Some airports, it's dependent on, we have an airport here locally where the aircraft is red 49. Well, there aren't 48 other ones. It's just that's the fire station at the airport. So they're red 49. But somebody landing there is not going to know who red 49 is necessarily. So what kind of training do you receive about talking to personnel on the ground, assisting them as far as obviously shutting down engines and things like that? Is it something that you really just tackle on a task by task basis, or is it something that actually comes up in training as well? But regardless, just hope the feedback finds y'all well, and blue skies as always. Thanks for a great show.
Well, thank you, Thomas. You make some very good points and ask some very good questions. And, that is one of the episodes that I did not hear on the Opposing Bases, because I did hear the previous episode where they posed the question by Captain Al regarding how do you express fuel remaining in time or in weight. and I need to go back and listen to that particular show. So I'm not sure what their conclusions were regarding that, and I'm not sure if that's something that's different from different parts of the world. But Lisa and I were just talking about the fact that all throughout our training, and especially in the military, it was always when they ask you how much fuel remaining you have, we always expressed it in amount of time or endurance. But it makes sense that the people with the firefighting equipment, they don't really care how much fuel you have endurance wise. They care about how much fuel they're going to have to deal with when you hit the runway, or have the firefighting capabilities and etc.
I think what Cap Now was saying on opposing bases was, why do you insist on having it in pounds? Because the aircraft, like Airbuses, will measure it in kilograms or tons.
Mm-hmm.
So what he was saying is, look, when you're asking that question, how much fuel is remaining, and you want it in pounds, the last person who needs to do the conversion are the pilots trying to deal with the emergency. We tell you what's on. We just look at the gauge and go, I've got 23 tons. Someone else further down the food chain can convert that to pounds if you want it in pounds, because it's a simple conversion. But we've got way too many things on our hands at the time to make that conversion for you to put it in pounds. Whereas the opposing bases guys, now I might be wrong here, or certainly there was an opinion that it ought to be expressed in pounds. It may not have come from RH and AG, but it may well have come from the feedback listener.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought that the controversy was whether we're expressing an endurance time or
that came into it as well, Jeff. But I think basically it came out to the fact that the air traffickers need it in time, the fire services need it in quantity.
I agree with you, Nick, that and Al, that if you express it in kilograms, because that's what you're seeing in your airplane, we're in the middle of an emergency situation. We don't need to be doing the math to calculate, to do the conversion into pounds. Somebody else can do that. That's not in the emergency situation. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
Just having come through training, to answer some of Thomas's first part of the question is, do we have SOPs as far as how do we handle emergencies? And the answer is absolutely yes, we do. We actually have SOPs in our FOM, and then we have, which is our Flight Operations Manual. We also have guidance in our QRHs for Quick Reference Handbook, and that's generally what we're referencing, especially once we start coming down towards evacuation. Now, as far as, whether we're going to evacuate an aircraft, is it an immediate need? Is the cabin filling up with fire and smoke? If that's the case, it's definitely going to come down to a judgment call. We do normally have the ability, especially when we're airborne, to go ahead and as we like to say, expand our team, so we can bring in the dispatcher via radio dispatch and to handle most emergencies. And most emergencies are not time critical. In other words, sit back, think about things, consider things. And we at Acme, we generally transfer controls of the aircraft, flying aircraft, to the pilot. Flying would be the first officer, so the captain can really get into the emergency, evaluate what's going on, and make the decisions that need to be made. Expanding a team, and if it's time critical, then you have to use your best judgment. There is no checklist per se to go ahead and evacuate the aircraft. There's an evacuation checklist, but to make the decision, it really is a command decision at that moment. So I think it's more of a judgment call at that point. So that's the first part of his question that he had asked.
Oh, very good answer. Thank you, Dana. Yeah, but as you said, we can learn about all these things. We have standard operating policies regarding certain situations, and then we use our quick reference handbook when we're dealing with an abnormal or emergency situation. But when it comes down to the final, the buck stops here. What do we evacuate or not? That's a judgment call, and you hope that you make the right decision, because you can guarantee that if you initiate an evacuation, there will be injuries, but that may be better than several injuries or even fatalities if you don't.
Certainly. And the other part of the question was, communication with ARF, and the communication with ARF is just realistically, it's different at every airport, as Thomas is alluding to, and we just established communication the best that we can, and I think we listened to a really good example of that, not necessarily today, but I think it was the last episode when you're talking about the air marshal that was on the aircraft, and the communication that was going on between the pilot and the tower, and the local people coming up to the aircraft. So if somebody plugs in on, and I think ARF usually will use ground frequency to talk to you, so they'll come in and you'll just coordinate back and forth, make sure the aircraft's secure, engines, any fire going on back there, any passengers. If we're going to move the aircraft, anybody decide to get off the aircraft, and that's, the captain's responsibility to coordinate with both the ARF and of course, most importantly, the flight attendants in the back to make sure that nobody has evacuated the aircraft prior to moving it. So we need to, use a professional level of experience and learn how to, not learn, but go ahead and communicate as we would normally in any situation. And that prevents a lot of issues.
Many of the we have ATC audio on so many of these incidents on this show, and every single time there always seems to be confusion with the folks in the cockpit, the folks in the tower, and the emergency vehicles on the ground, and what frequency they're on. I wish there was some kind of a standardization when it comes to that, so that we everywhere, like a certain size airport, that has these kind of services and facilities, that this is the standard. Everybody goes to this frequency, or, everybody be on ground control or whatever. I wish that was more standardized, honestly.
Yeah, but the trouble is, all around the world, it's different. Each country has its own procedures. Each airport has its own variations. It becomes a nightmare. So you just kind of assume a generic system. That there'll be a frequency, there'll be somebody on it. The bloke who's talking on it will probably be in charge. Just talk to him like you're on a telephone if you can't come up with a call sign, and ask him what's going on outside your airplane. Hopefully he can speak enough English to be able to give you the information you need to make the decision.
Yep. Anything to add, Lisa? No?
I don't think y'all covered it.
All right.
The big question is it safer to stay on board than get overboard? So, that's actually quite a simple decision. If it's starting to become intolerable inside the aircraft, put everyone outside, because that's going to be safer.
Yep. Okay, well, we're getting close to the end of the show, and we have a couple of pieces of audio feedback that I want to make sure that we do on today's show. And they're from our good friend down under in the beautiful North Island of New Zealand in Wellington. His name, Glenn Towler. And he sent in, as I said, 2 separate pieces of audio feedback dealing with different things, and some photos to go with each one, which you'll be able to find in the show notes for the show, episode 338. So let's start with this first one. And he says, hi, Jeff, just a bit of feedback about what I did before Oshkosh this year. Tailwinds. Here we go.
Hello, Captain Jeff, Captain Dana, Dr. Steph, and Captain Nick. It's Glenn here from New Zealand with some more feedback. I just want to say what a great community we have here in the APG. Talking about the stuff I did before I went to Oshkosh this year. A big thank you to Michael Renwick, a fellow APG syndrome sufferer, who gave me a great tour of the Acme technical operations, where they do all the engine strip downs and the heavy maintenance, some of the maintenance on the jets. Like we saw 2 A330s, a Mad Dog, and we even saw a US Navy Poseidon that's going under maintenance in one of the Delta hangars there. Acme hangars. Yeah, it was great. Really good. And also, interesting thing I did when I went to visit a friend of mine who lives in Minnesota. He's a part owner in a seaplane, so he took me up for a 2-hour seaplane ride over Minnesota and St. Paul's. And we even actually landed on the River Mississippi. And it's quite interesting. We come down, it's quite sporty today, but we come down and landed on the river, and it's bouncing, and it's like, and the words, "You can always go around," suddenly sprang to mind. And I actually said to him, "Look, I think we can always go around." He says, "Oh yes, I think we should." That's a really good call. So just no thought I'd actually say it. Say to anyone, you can always go around. Yeah, it is. Looking forward, of course, to Oshkosh 19. Do something. Oh, I'm sure we will. I'm sure we'll be there. All being well. Anyway, keep up the good work. Blue skies, tailwinds, and unlimited IPAs. Glenn out.
Thank you, Glenn. Unlimited IPAs. I like the sound of that. Yep. And I don't know if you heard the little audio clip I played there in the background, the Go Around song. Interesting experience. Thanks, Glenn, for sharing. And here is his second piece of feedback, a little bit more recent.
Hello, my fellow APG Syndrome sufferers. Wow. Hello, Dr. Steph, Captain Jeff.
A little loud, sorry, folks. Let me just start from the beginning there. I'm not sure this is going to help or not, but here we go.
Hello, my fellow APG Syndrome sufferers. Hello, Dr. Steph, Captain Jeff, Captain Nick, Captain Dana. It's Glenn from New Zealand again. I'm sure you know my voice by now. And I'm here with Lucas Diamond. And we've actually committed aviation for a go figure. Yeah, how unusual. So, yeah, and we had a really nice flight today in his rental Cessna 172 flying over the North Island of New Zealand. So, over to you, Lucas.
I'm on the Glenn Tower APG hour. Yep. Glenn is now the proud recipient of about 40 minutes PIC because we had a very long flight today and have it for a long time. So went up to a place called Whanganui here and then went into real bear country to look for a bridge that is no longer used anymore. It's kind of we had a devil finding it. Glenn finally spotted it out the side of the window, so we did a few orbits of that and got a few shots. A bit of a bucket list moment for me, wanting to go up that bridge for a wee while. So we came back around to the Tararua and then back in for a landing. So it was a great 3.4 hours on the logbook. We stopped in a P in Whanganui, but it wasn't too bad. We saw was it Convair 380?
Yes, it was. Yeah. 580.
Convair 580. I was thinking of 340 Saab. Convair 580 from Chatham's. Over to you.
Yeah, so we had a really good time. We're just sitting here having an IPA or two and a pizza.
IPA.
And what a really nice day. And just as I said in my previous feedback, what a great community we have here in the APG that we can go out and do stuff like this together and have a really good time. So that's it, and that'll be Glenn out.
Glenn, thanks for sending that in. It is really a small world, this world of aviation and this world of aviation podcasting, where two guys that listen to the same show get together and go flying and drinking beer and eating pizza and doing all kinds of great stuff. Beer and pizza, that sounds good.
In that order, I hope.
Yes.
It especially sounds really good. I haven't anything to eat since Monday.
Oh, you should probably eat.
Nope.
It's
Two
Wednesday.
More days. 2 more days.
Wow, you're going to do a full week, huh?
Yep.
Yeah,
at least
man.
2 more days.
Okay.
Diet too?
He's doing. Too. Yeah, he's the one that actually.
Tell you, Jeff is the 5th captain that is doing that diet that I've flown with in the last month.
I've corrupted them all.
Yeah, I guess so.
No, it's only Jeff that actually.
So they're all flaking out with low blood sugars.
My blood sugar is fantastic, and I have the most energy when I'm not eating.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it's all about insulin sensitivity. And stuff.
I rode 10.5 miles on my pedal bike today, not my motorcycle. And nice. I haven't even turned TV on once all day because I've been going all day. This is the first time I sat down to do the show. Mm-hmm. So it works for some people.
Okay. It's not a dieting show, so we're not going to go off on that tangent.
Not going to.
Yeah.
Not at all.
But Yeah, interesting stuff, though, for sure. So thank you again, Glenn, for sharing that with us, and we look forward to seeing you in Oshkosh 2019. We have some exciting developments going on behind the scenes that we hope to share with everybody soon. But needless to say, I think that our big meetup for 2019 is going to be in Wisconsin, and we plan to have a great time. And we hope that you can join us there as well. Let's see. I think Liz was telling me that number 14 is a quick one. And I don't know, did you guys get to see this video of the, well, let me see. Let me play this here.
Yes, I did see that video.
It's very interesting music in the background. Hope you're enjoying that. So basically, this is security camera footage. So that's why the person that did this, shared this video, put this music to it. And it's a time-lapse video of a runway. I'm not sure. Is it LAX? Yes. And so we have airplanes taxiing by, a couple parallel taxiways, and there's some vehicular traffic as well. I see now coming into view an Alaska Q400. And then it has to stop for a moment. And then there's this truck that has a couple of pallets. What do you call those things?
ULDs?
Yeah, ULDs. Thank you. Decides to drive behind the Q400. And guess what? Oh, yeah, one of the ULDs gets blown off the trailer and into the path of a United 737. And the ULD actually hits the right engine nacelle. I'm wondering if of course this is in time lapse. I bet the United guys are probably going, quick, shut down that engine. I don't know. No, we weren't there, but that's what I would be thinking anyway. So, what do you
know, Jeff, after working on the ramp for many years and dealing with those containers, they are extremely lightweight when there's nothing in them. So it doesn't take a whole lot to blow them across the ramp, and that's been demonstrated numerous times, not only in this video but over the years. So in the way that it moved, the way that it blew away, and the way it moved across the ramp, I would venture to guess there was nothing in there whatsoever. They only weigh maybe 70, 80 pounds at the most. Yeah,
they're kind of like a sail, you know.
Yeah, it's an empty aluminum can. It's basically what it is, and it's very lightweight material, obviously, because when you're putting stuff on the aircraft, what this device is a preload bin. So you can go ahead. It's a container that you in the back room will load up all the cargo and or bags. So you'll stack them. Then they'll be loaded on a flat loader. Basically, it's a big old can loader that puts them into the belly of a wide body aircraft. So that way you don't have to sit there and try to stack every single bag or cargo into the belly of the airplane. So when they're empty, they are extremely light and easily moved. Even heavy winds can push them away. Now, normally on the loading cart, there's lockdown mechanisms that are supposed to lock them. So it's like a little latch mechanism on four sides that that latch over the edges of it and hold it in place. So that apparently was not engaged.
And that the person driving the tug with the ULDs, trailered ULDs behind it, I think made an error in judgment. I would imagine that they get good training on, not driving too close behind jets and propeller airplanes because of the fact, this jet wash or a prop wash. And I think that this person maybe just got impatient and cut it too close. But they probably got in a little bit of trouble for that, I would imagine.
Where was the airport again?
LAX.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Los Angeles. In fact, I know exactly where it is because I can see the gate number, and that's the Alaska / United terminal. And we used to share it at Acme. We used to share this Terminal 6 array of gates toward the end of the terminal here. So I know exactly where that is, looking south.
I've never been there.
Yeah, it's an interesting place. Okay, let's see. I think we're getting pretty darn close to the end of the show. Is there any other piece of feedback that you all see in there that we might want to quickly talk about, Like, for instance, what does Louisiana Steve say? Oh, that's a long one. Sorry, Louisiana Steve. We're going to have to save that for the next show. Ivor sent us a quick feedback. Hello, all. Where is Hicktown Rick? I mentioned the Florida Freighter as I have a question that he would be all over, but sadly I'll have to accept your fumbled attempts at answering this top quality inquiry. He has a very high opinion of himself, Ivor, and we do too. Here we go. I recently received this lovely iPad for my birthday. Well deserved, I must say. When I unwrapped it, my first thought was to put it on charge, but no, it was almost fully charged. My daughter-in-law said her phone was the same when she got it. So, to my point, when these batteries or bits of technology that have batteries installed are shipped all around the world, would they be safer if that battery had no charge in it? Or do they still burn and possibly run away even in a no charge state? Does the state of charge influence the severity of the burn? If this question is too difficult, feel free to pass it on to the PTUK boys. I believe they have the brains and the looks to handle it. It's not that you girls and boys don't have some good points. Anywho, love and kisses, Ivor. We love Ivor. And you can tell he has a lot of respect for us, doesn't he? No.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. Do you, Nick? Perhaps maybe the PTUK boys and girls would be better at answering this.
A battery, in order to generate heat that causes a runaway, needs charge. Without energy, there's no heat. Without heat, there's no reduction in resistance. Without that, you don't get a runaway. So yes, there has to be a charge in the battery for it to run away. Otherwise, it doesn't go anywhere. It sits there like an old tortoise.
So then why do we ship these things with charge? There must be a reason for it.
Oh, yes, there is. And from memory, Apple were the guys that thought this, because they said when you first get your wonderful iPod out of, as it was in those days, out of its lovely shiny box, the last thing you want to do is to have to plug it in, wait 4 hours before you can play with it. So they started shipping them with charge. And of course, in those days, they were probably not nickel cadmium. They were the old, what were they called? The old style batteries.
Yeah, what were they?
Alkaline.
Yeah, thank you. Well done, Dana. Alkaline batteries, which didn't have this problem. So, but of course, the customer expects now when you get hold of your new iPhone, as I did yesterday, I got a brand new iPhone.
Oh, look at you. Which one did you get?
The 8 Plus.
Oh, nice.
8 Plus, okay.
That's my birthday present, the new 8 Plus.
Happy birthday. It's not your birthday yet. It's not even your birthday month yet.
Yeah, I know, but I'll be away for my birthday. I'll be in Washington, so I got an early birthday present. So the answer is the customer wants them with charge, so they arrive with charge, and as such, they are dealt with. You don't transport a whole bunch of iPads with charge without considering them as a potential threat. So they're dealt with in the same way as if you were transporting a whole bunch of just batteries on their own. And yes, it would be safer. But that's the way the industry wants them. If they're packed sufficiently well, they shouldn't suffer any problems and they shouldn't have any runaways. So fingers crossed it all works. But yeah, you're quite right. If it would be safer to have no charge on board.
Well, everything is run on a wing and a prayer anyway in our business. So,
well, and certainly if you take a look at how many pieces of equipment in the world are on aircraft at any given time and being shipped at any given time, and the amount of incidents that happen to occur, the insurance, the actuaries, I think that's what the people that calculate out the risk factors. I would say it's actually, even though it's a risk, obviously, if it goes, it goes, and it doesn't go very well. But I would say that the risk factor is actually fairly low, even though they can run away. And, I don't know the answer to this question, but would it matter to the level of state of charge? I mean, if it has a very low charge in it, enough to, let's say, start the device and get it going, versus a fully charged battery, does that make a difference in the potential for runaway? I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, I think, Lisa, didn't you study in you have a degree in battery technology?
Electrical engineering?
Yeah.
Whoa.
No, I don't. But I can tell you that we had to listen to a talk from the leaders of FedEx. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, and they said that is their number one concern: nickel cadmium batteries and shipping them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa has a degree in passing gas.
Yeah.
I really can't say anything at all.
Haven't heard that one before.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
they
a
were
good
tankers you were flying, weren't they?
Did you ever pass any gas to any RAF or RAAF jets?
It was a long time ago, but I think I did.
Yeah.
I had several deployments over there where we were all flying together. So
Yeah, they
sure
used to strap a limp 12-foot of hose on the end of that stupid boom and then wave it around in the sky and expect us to make contact with it. And we were going, you've got to be kidding me.
it was a big target on a KC-10, that drogue, right?
Yeah, but the length of hose was like, oh, give me a break. We're normally used to a 40-foot hose. Gives you a bit of leeway. With a 12-foot dangly bit stuck on the end of a boom, that doesn't really work.
Was the F4 easier than the F-18 or vice versa? Or
Much
did
as
it matter?
much as the F4 was probably easier. It had a slightly smaller bow, so the drogue moved less. But no, every aircraft has its own foibles when it comes to drogue and probe refueling, for sure.
Cool. Well, sorry we went off on that tangent, but that's fun stuff to talk about, I think. Okay, well, you know what, folks? We're going to call it quits for today's show, and we're going to let you know that if you are new to the show and you want to learn more about it, you can head over to Airline Pilot Guy, airlinepilotguy.com, our website, and there you'll find information about the show, the crew, the community, merchandise, the coffee fund, and so much more. Again, that's airlinepilotguy.com. And we are also, we have a couple of apps that are free, ad-free and free to download from either the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store if you have an Android machine. And there you can enable push notifications, and hopefully you'll get the push notification. I did today on my iPhone that we're recording a show. And then after I finish doing all the editing and post it, if you have one of these apps and you have the push notifications set up properly, you should receive a message that it's ready for your consumption. So check out those things. And we're also on social media. Captain Nick?
Yeah, we are on Twitter. You can just attract our attention by going at APG Crew. And if you're looking to find us on Facebook, then just look for the standard Facebook intro/Airline Pilot Guy.
Now, when you came in, Lisa, when you're going by the bathroom there, did you happen to notice that man that was in there?
No.
Okay. Hello, come on out. This is your part of the show. Okay, just move over a little bit so you can hit the microphone. Okay, here you go. Take it away, Hello.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share ideas and news. We suggest episode and Playing Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com, or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled HI11E1, Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hello. Now get back to the bathroom. Okay. And I think that's about it. So until next time, wishing you all clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Bye, everybody.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Adios, amigos.
Yay.
Very good. Well done.
I didn't even brief her on it. She just picked that right up. I should say something after everybody else has said something. Okay. So what did you think? Was it a complete waste of your time today?
No, not at all. It was great. I don't feel like I added
Yeah, you
much
did.
anything. Probably
Yeah.
negative ad, but whatever.
No, not at all.
Thanks for letting me participate.
Yeah, it's a great group of people. I know you've only met some of them here, sort of.
So, Lisa, what's your real name?
Lisa.
Tony.
Oh, that was my chance to say Liz.
for first time.
No, when Dana did a show with me for the first time, he didn't have enough trust
Gumption.
and confidence in this whole thing, and he decided to call himself Tony.
Oh, I wish I would have thought of that. Because now
You could have been
I'm like,
Tony.
"Ugh."
I should have told you. You said you, and we have Tony.
Tony too.
Anyway, and so far he hasn't gotten in any trouble, for doing this.
Good.
Yeah,
That you know of.
that we know.
Hey, you made a captain, mate. Can't be that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did actually. I did pay somebody off. I had to. It's the only way that was going to happen.
Lane says Lisa looks very confused. Oh yeah, when I was telling about Hillel, yeah, it's a little gag that we have going. That Hillel is always here with me wherever I am, and he comes out at the very end to do his Slack thing.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, because she actually moved out of the way. I'm going, no, I'm just kidding. He's not here. There's really not a guy in the bathroom.
She's like, yeah, who's the guy in the bathroom?
When your like cartoon guy comes in and is on the thing.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. Okay, well, thanks everybody in the chat room for joining us today. We do appreciate it. You guys really are there for us and encourage us to continue to do this. So if you want the show to go away, just don't show up and don't contribute any money to the coffee fund. That'll do it.
Yeah, that'll sort us out.
Yeah. All right. So we got to go. Got an early morning tomorrow morning. And again, thanks everybody. We're going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. And look forward to seeing you again next week.
Hi, everybody. And all I can say to you is bong.
Boing, 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 boing.
Oh.